what getting high was like in medieval times, plus the bizarre side effects. Hey guys, tonight we are going to drift back through the centuries long before the glow of a smartphone screen to a time lit only by firelight and the moon. We're going to explore what it was like to feel different, to alter your mind in a world where reality itself was already pretty strange. You're lying on a straw-stuffed mattress, the smoky air of your one-room house, thick with the smell of damp earth and the stew that's been bubbling over the hearth for 3 days. Outside there are no streetlights, no police sirens, just the immense crushing darkness of the medieval countryside and the distant howl of a wolf. Frankly, you probably won't survive the next plague famine or random Tuesday, but for now, you're here with us. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And for a bit of fun, post your city and what time it is where you are in the comments below. It's always a treat to see where everyone is listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The rough wool of your blanket scratches your chin. You pull it up higher anyway, a futile attempt to ward off the persistent chill that seems to seep right out of the wattle and daub walls of your home. The fire in the central hearth has died down to a soft orange glow, casting long dancing shadows that make the familiar shapes of hanging pots and bundles of dried herbs look like lurking beasts. Your entire world, your whole life is contained in this single smoky room. You share it with your family, their soft snores and occasional coughs, a constant familiar rhythm in the night. You also share it with a few chickens who occasionally rustle in their corner and a veritable army of mice who are far less considerate. It's a life of profound physical hardship. You wake before the sun to work the fields, your body, a constant symphony of aches from your back, your hands, your feet. The food is monotonous, the entertainment is whatever story an old grandparent can remember, and the future looks, well, exactly like the present. So when the day is done and the deep, dark night presses in from all sides, the desire for a small escape isn't just understandable, it's practically a survival instinct. But your options are limited. There are no corner stores, no online dispensaries, no friendly neighborhood dealers with a trench coat full of goodies. Your pharmacy, your liquor cabinet, and your head shop are all one and the same. The small, chaotic patch of green just outside your door. Your garden. Let's slip out of the smoky hut for a moment. You don't even bother with shoes. The packed earth is cool and familiar beneath your calloused feet. The moon is a sharp sliver tonight, but the stars are a brilliant, spangled canopy, brighter than you can possibly imagine in our modern, light-polluted world. The air is clean, crisp, and smells of damp soil, night-blooming flowers, and the faint, ever-present aroma of livestock. Your garden isn't neat, it's a jumble of life. Next to the struggling cabbage and the hardy onions, you have your herbs. These aren't just for seasoning the endless pottage, they are your medicine, they are your comfort, and sometimes they are your secret little holiday from reality. Your gaze falls on a feathery silver-green plant with tiny yellow flowers growing defiantly in a corner. This is Wormwood Artemisia absinthium. You know it mostly as a medicine. Your mother makes a hideously bitter tea from its leaves to chase out gutworms, a constant affliction in a world where sanitation is just a funny-sounding word. She hangs bundles of it from the rafters to keep the fleas and moths at bay. Its scent is sharp, clean, and medicinal, the very smell of, "This will taste awful, but it's good for you." But you also know that if you chew on a fresh leaf or make a tea that's just a little bit stronger than usual, something shifts. It's not a dramatic, world-altering high. Not yet. We'll get to those later. This is subtle. It's a gentle unfocusing of the edges of your hard reality. The gnawing ache in your lower back seems to recede, replaced by a mild, pleasant warmth. Your thoughts, usually consumed with the next day's labor or the worry of a poor harvest, begin to wander and drift like smoke. Colors in the moonlight seem a little richer. The chirping of the crickets sounds more complex, like a tiny orchestra playing just for you. This is the effect of a compound called thujone, the same chemical that would later make absinthe the notorious drink of 19th century artists. But for you here in the 12th century, it's not a bohemian statement. It's a folk remedy, a gift from a common weed that offers a moment's peace. A mainstream historical fact is that Charlemagne himself, way back in the 9th century, ordered wormwood to be grown in the imperial gardens for its medicinal properties. It was a staple of the monastic and domestic medical kit for centuries. You move on your eyes, scanning the ground near the edge of the garden where it meets the wilder tangle of the hedgerow. There you spot what you're looking for, a tall, slightly prickly plant with pale yellow flowers. If you were to snap its stem, a sticky white milky sap would ooze out. This is Lactuca virosa, or wild lettuce. To a modern eye, it's just a weed. To you, it's a blessing. You've seen the local cunning woman, the village healer, carefully collect this sap, letting it dry into a dark gummy substance. She calls it a sleep bringer, a pain soother. And she's right. This plant contains lactucarium, a substance sometimes called lettuce opium. And that's our quirky tidbit for the evening. The humble ancestor of the iceberg lettuce in your salad has a mild psychoactive and pain-relieving effect. It's nowhere near the power of true opium, of course, but for a toothache that's been driving you mad for a week, or for the sheer exhaustion that settles deep in your bones, it's a miracle. You can make a tea from the leaves, or more effectively, harvest that gummy sap. The feeling it brings is one of heavy-limbed relaxation. It's a sedative. It doesn't make you trip or see visions. It simply tells your overwrought body and mind that it's okay to let go. The world softens. The constant low-level pain and anxiety that is your daily companion dissolves into a drowsy, comfortable fog. You feel floaty, detached, as if you're watching your own life from a safe, comfortable distance. For a person whose body is their only tool and whose pain is a constant tax, this temporary relief is a profound form of intoxication. It's a vacation you can take while lying perfectly still on your straw bed. And of course there are the poppies. Not necessarily the potent Papaver somniferum, the opium poppy we'll journey to meet later, but its common cousins like the field poppy Papaver royas, which sprinkle the grain fields with their delicate red petals every summer. You know these flowers well. You've seen your mother crush the petals and mix them with honey or warm milk to create a syrup for a fussy teething baby or a child with a hacking cough. It calms them, helps them sleep through the night. Everyone in the village does it. It's just what you do. No one thinks of it as drugging a child. It's giving them a remedy so the whole family can get some desperately needed rest. And as an adult, you know that a tea made from a handful of those red petals can take the edge off a headache and lend a rosy, pleasant tint to your mood. The effect is mild, stemming from different alkaloids than those found in the opium poppy, but it's there. A gentle nudge towards tranquility, a whisper of the deeper oblivion that other plants can offer. It's a reminder that the line between a simple flower, a medicine, and a mind-altering drug is a line drawn in sand, constantly shifting with intention and dosage. This is the fundamental reality of your medieval experience with getting high. It's almost never purely for recreation. That's a modern concept born of leisure and relative safety. Your intoxication is deeply intertwined with healing and survival. Historians still argue whether the common peasant deliberately sought out these altered states for pleasure, or if any high was simply a welcome side effect of necessary medicine. The truth, as it often is likely somewhere in the messy middle. When you brew that extra strong wormwood tea, are you doing it because your stomach aches or because your spirit aches? When you seek out the opium lettuce, is it for your aching back or for the ache in your heart from a life that is so relentlessly, painfully real? The answer is probably yes. There's no judgment here, no concept of addiction as a disease. There is only what works. If a plant eases your pain, helps you sleep, or stills your troubled mind for a few precious hours, it is a good plant. It is a gift. The village healer, the one some might call a witch behind her back, knows this better than anyone. Her knowledge of the local flora is a sacred text passed down through generations. She knows which mushrooms can kill you and which can make you see God. She knows which roots cause madness and which can mend a broken bone. Your humble garden is just the first page of her encyclopedia. You pluck a fuzzy leaf of horehound, another bitter herb for coughs, and rub it between your fingers, inhaling the sharp scent. You look back at your little hut, a dark shape against the impossibly starry sky. Life in there is hard, short, and often brutal. But out here in the quiet dark of your garden, surrounded by these potent, mysterious, and helpful green allies, you can find a measure of control. You can choose to soothe your own pain. You can choose to alter your own reality just for a little while. You can find a small, quiet rebellion in the bottom of a teacup brewed from weeds. It's not about escaping life, not really. It's about finding a way to endure it, to make the brief, flickering candle of your existence burn just a little bit brighter and with a little less pain before it's inevitably snuffed out. You take a deep breath of the cool night air, the bitter scent of wormwood still clinging to your fingers, and you head back inside, ready for whatever sleep and your herbs might bring. You settle back down on your straw-stuffed pallet, the brief trip into the cool night air, leaving your skin tingling. The dreamy, relaxed feeling from the wild lettuce is beginning to take hold, a pleasant heaviness behind your eyes. But the smoky air in the hut has left a dry, scratchy feeling in your throat. You're thirsty. You fumble in the near darkness for the wooden cup by your sleeping spot and consider the water bucket in the corner. Then you reconsider. The water in that bucket was hauled yesterday from the village well. The well, a stone-lined pit in the center of the village green, is a hub of social life. It's where women gather to share gossip, where children play, and where every animal in the village comes to drink and, well, do everything else animals do. The runoff from the blacksmith's forge and the tanner's yard, with all its foul-smelling chemicals, seeps into the same ground. A few hundred feet away is the churchyard, where generations of your ancestors are slowly returning to the earth. Not to mention the simple fact that there's no such thing as a sewer system. Waste, both human and animal, is a constant and fragrant feature of daily life. So you look at the water bucket and you know that taking a long drink from it is a roll of the dice. It might quench your thirst, or it might give you a week of agonizing cramps, dysentery, what you call the flux, and quite possibly kill you. This is the great paradox of your life water. The very substance of existence is a constant threat. Your world is in a very real sense dehydrated. So what do you drink? What does everyone drink, from the smallest child to the oldest grandparent? You drink ale. You push yourself up and shuffle over to a different barrel, one that gives off a faint, yeasty, slightly sour smell. You dip your cup in the liquid that fills it is not clear and sparkling. It's murky brown and has little flecks of grain floating in it. You take a sip. It's not crisp and refreshing like a modern beer. It's thick, slightly sweet, and tastes like liquid bread. This is small beer, and it is the fuel of your world. It's a low-alcohol brew, probably only about 1 or 2%, but it's a powerhouse of nutrition packed with B vitamins and carbohydrates from the grain. A mainstream historical fact is that a medieval peasant might consume as much as a gallon of this weak ale per day, providing a significant portion of their daily caloric intake. It was food and drink in one cup. Crucially, the process of making it, boiling the water, the wort, and then fermenting it, killed off the dangerous pathogens that made the well water so treacherous. The alcohol and hops, once they were more widely introduced, also acted as preservatives. So this cloudy, warmish brew isn't just a pleasure, it's a public health initiative. Children drink it. Your own mother probably weaned you from breast milk onto a mixture of ale and bread. You drink it for breakfast to wash down a hunk of dark rye bread. You drink it in the fields under the hot sun, and you drink it now in the middle of the night to safely quench your thirst. The constant companion to this river of ale is a low-level background buzz. It's not enough to make you stumble or slur your words, but it's there, a permanent, gentle softening of reality's hard edges. Historians still argue about how much the constant low-level consumption of alcohol affected the medieval mindset and whether it created a society perpetually living in a mild, buzzy haze. For you, it's just normal. It's the taste of safety, the taste of home. It's a gentle warmth in your belly that has been there almost every day of your life. It's a different kind of high from the one you found in the garden. The herbs were a quiet, solitary escape, a secret between you and the earth. Ale is the opposite. It is profoundly, fundamentally social. The making of it is a domestic art handled by the women of the village. You can picture your wife or your mother, the alewife or brewster, tending to the mash, the sweet steamy smell of boiling grain filling the entire village. When she has a particularly good batch, she might hang a broom or a bundle of branches, an ale stake, over the door to let everyone know that ale is for sale. This turns your home temporarily into an ale house, the centre of the community's social world. Now imagine it's the end of the week. The back-breaking labour is done for a day at least. You have a coin or two, or perhaps some goods to barter. You're not staying in for a quiet night with a cup of small beer. You're heading to the alehouse. It might be a neighbour's cottage or a more permanent establishment run by a widow to support her family. You push open the wooden door and a wall of sound and heat hits you. The room is packed. It's lit by tallow candles that sputter and smoke, casting a greasy, flickering light on the faces of your neighbours. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, sweat, wet wool and spilled ale. It's deafeningly loud. Men are shouting stories over one another, laughing, arguing about the price of pigs or the boundaries of a field. A group in the corner is singing a bawdy song, banging their cups on the rough-hewn wooden table for emphasis. You squeeze your way to the host, who draws you a cup of something special. This isn't the weak, watery small beer. This is the good stuff. Strong ale. It's darker, thicker, and the alcoholic kick is immediate and potent. On a stomach that's rarely full, the effect is swift and powerful. The warmth in your belly spreads through your entire body. The constant ache in your muscles from a week of manual labor begins to dissolve. The worries that gnaw at your mind, the leaking roof, the sick cow, the coming winter, are pushed aside by a wave of boisterous cheer. This is where the real intoxication lies. The world, which is usually so demanding and serious, becomes a joke. Your friends are the wittiest people you've ever met. Your own stories are suddenly heroic and hilarious. You feel strong. You feel happy. You feel for a few hours like a king. The communal experience is intoxicating in itself. You are not drinking alone. You are part of a loud, messy, vibrant organism. You are sharing in a temporary release that everyone here has earned. The bonds of community are forged and reinforced in these smoky rooms, cup by cup. Of course, it's not all harmless fun. Tempers frayed by hardship and fueled by strong drink can easily snap. An old grudge can surface, an argument can turn into a shoving match, and a shoving match can easily spill out into the muddy street for a clumsy, drunken brawl. But even that is part of the texture of life, a story to be told and laughed about the next morning. And how do you know if the ale you're drinking is any good? That brings us to our quirky tidbit for the night, the ale conner. In many towns and manors, an official was appointed to test the quality of the ale being sold. One of the more colourful, though possibly apocryphal methods described for this was for the ale conner to wear a stout pair of leather breeches. He would pour a bit of the ale onto a wooden bench, then sit in the puddle for a good half-hour. When he stood up, if his breeches stuck firmly to the bench, it meant the ale contained a good amount of residual sugars from the grain and hadn't been watered down. The ale was therefore of good quality. You can just imagine this serious-looking man patiently sitting in a puddle of beer, a human hydrometer, all in the name of consumer protection. It's a bit of a step up from a one-star Yelp review. But ale isn't just for a Saturday night blowout. It's woven into the very fabric of your calendar. There are church ales, massive parish-wide brewing sessions and festivals held to raise money for the church. Everyone donates malt, helps with the brewing, and then everyone comes to drink and feast with the profits going to repair the roof or buy a new bell. There are bride ales, the wedding feasts for couples who couldn't afford a big celebration on their own, where guests would pay for their drink to help the newlyweds get started. These events, these ales, are the bedrock of your social and economic life. They are your holidays, your fundraisers, your moments of shared identity. As you stand in the noisy, smoky alehouse, another cup of strong drink in your hand, you feel a sense of belonging that is as potent as the alcohol itself. Out there in the dark fields, life is a solitary struggle against the earth. But in here, you are not alone. You are one voice in the chorus of song, one body in a press of warm, living humanity. You are all in this together, and this shared ritual of drinking is a confirmation of that fact. It's a far cry from the quiet, introspective buzz of the garden herbs. This is a high that is loud, communal, and unapologetically human. It is the great, ever-present lubricant of medieval society, making the gears of a hard world turn just a little more smoothly. You raise your cup, someone slaps you on the back, and you join in the next roaring off-key song, your own voice lost and found in the happy drunken noise. The morning after your visit to the alehouse dawns with a familiar, dull throbbing behind your eyes. The sun, slanting through the gaps in your hut's wall, feels aggressively bright. The cheerful sounds of the village, waking up a rooster, crowing a dog, barking, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, are a personal affront to your fragile state. That strong ale, so full of joy and camaraderie last night, has left its tax on your body. You swill a cup of the weaker small beer, its bland, bready taste, a small comfort. As you step outside into the muddy track that serves as a street, your gaze is drawn, as it often is, to the one structure in the landscape that seems to defy the chaos of your world, the monastery. It sits on a low hill a short distance away, its stone walls solid and permanent, its bell tower a clean, confident finger pointing at the heavens. While your village is a jumble of wood, mud and thatch, the monastery is a vision of order. It represents a different world, one of quiet contemplation of knowledge, and though you might not think of it in these terms of a truly superior quality of intoxication, you imagine the life of a monk as one of prayer and chanting, of quiet labour and simple meals. And you're not wrong, but you're missing a huge part of the picture. Because within those stone walls, the simple arts of healing and brewing that you practice at home are elevated to a level of scientific mastery you can't even comprehend. Let's leave your aching head behind and slip through the monastery gates. The change in atmosphere is immediate. The chaotic noise of the village is replaced by a soft, disciplined hum, the distant sound of a choir practicing, the rhythmic scrape of a hoe in a garden, the rustle of turning pages. You are in a place dedicated to order, and nowhere is this more apparent than in the monastery's gardens. Remember your own little patch of green behind the hut, a wild tangle of herbs and vegetables fighting for space. Now look here. Before you is the Hortus Medicus, the monk's medicinal garden, and it is a masterpiece of design. The plants are arranged in neat raised beds separated by gravel paths you could walk on without getting a speck of mud on your sandals. Each plant type has its own designated space, sometimes with a small wooden marker bearing its name in Latin, a language you can't read, but which speaks of a deep and ancient knowledge. The air here is thick with a complex, fragrant perfume. You can smell the sharp, pine-like scent of rosemary, which the monks use to aid memory and soothe headaches. There's the sweet, calming aroma of lavender used in washes and balms to encourage sleep. You see fennel for digestion, sage for cleaning teeth and treating fevers, and comfrey, known as knitbone, for mending fractures. But nestled among these familiar friends are other, more potent residents. There, in a carefully tended bed, is a patch of henbane, its hairy leaves and lurid purple-veined flowers looking subtly menacing. You've heard whispers of this plant, how it can cause madness or be used in potions by those with dark intentions. Here, however, it is simply another tool used in minute, carefully measured doses by the infirmary monk to create powerful painkillers and sedatives. And yes, there are poppies. But unlike the wild red flowers in your wheat fields, these are a specific cultivated variety. The monks here don't just steep the petals in milk for a fussy baby. They know how to score the unripe seed pods and collect the raw opium, a skill passed down from ancient texts. They process this into powerful medicines like laudanum, a tincture of opium in alcohol. A single drop of their potent preparation can quell the most violent cough or ease the suffering of a man with a shattered leg. It is a mercy, a gift of sleep and peace in a world of immense pain. But it is also a substance of profound power. The sleepy bliss it offers is a universe away from the gentle calm of your field poppy tea. This is the key difference knowledge. While you and the village alewife rely on tradition passed down orally, my grandmother always said 2 leaves of this for a fever. The monks have books. In their scriptorium, they have copies of texts by ancient Roman and Greek physicians like Galen and Dioscorides. They are part of a network that stretches across Christendom, a 1,000-year-long conversation about the properties of plants. They experiment, they measure, they record their findings. They are, in a very real sense, the scientists and pharmacists of your age. And this scientific approach extends to their most famous product, their drink. The ale you drank last night was likely cloudy, inconsistent, and brewed in a pot over a fire. The monk's brew is another thing entirely. Their brew houses are large, purpose-built structures. They have access to vast tracts of land to grow the finest barley. They have the resources to cultivate hops, which add that bitter, aromatic flavor, and more importantly act as a preservative, allowing their beer to last longer and travel farther. A defining historical fact of the era is that monasteries were the epicenters of brewing innovation, standardizing recipes, and essentially inventing beer as we know it today. For the monks, brewing wasn't just a way to make a safe beverage, it was a form of sacred, dignified labor, a way to provide hospitality to travelers as mandated by the rule of St. Benedict, and an excellent way to fund the monastery's work. The result is a drink that would put your village's best effort to shame. It is clearer, richer, and far more potent. Drinking a strong monastic ale is a different experience. It's complex with notes of fruit and spice you've never tasted before. It warms you from the inside out with a clean, powerful glow. This leads us to a truly delightful, quirky tidbit, the story of the Lenten Doppelbock beer. During the 40 days of Lent, monks were expected to fast, abstaining from all solid food. This was a serious spiritual discipline, but a physically draining one. So the Paulinaire monks in Germany during the 17th century, drawing on centuries of brewing tradition, came up with a clever, pious workaround. They brewed an especially strong, dark and calorie-rich beer they called Flüssiges Brot, or liquid bread. It was packed with so much nutrition from the malt that it could sustain them through the fast. It was also, of course, incredibly alcoholic. They were in essence getting piously hammered to make it through a period of religious abstinence. They even sent a barrel to the Pope for his blessing. Though the story goes, it had spoiled by the time it crossed the Alps, and he declared the foul brew a fitting penance, giving them the green light. This story, whether entirely true or not, highlights a fascinating grey area. Where does medicine end and pleasure begin? Where does spiritual discipline end and worldly indulgence take over? Scholars still debate to what degree monks understood the psychoactive properties of their preparations, and whether they ever used them for spiritual insight rather than purely for medicinal or economic purposes. Did a monk suffering from a painful ailment and given a dose of the infirmary's opium tincture ever find himself not just free of pain, but perhaps feeling a little closer to God in his blissful, dreamy state? Did the deep meditative calm induced by a carefully prepared herbal tea ever blur the line with a state of profound prayer? We can never truly know. But as you stand there in the quiet, orderly world of the monastery, you understand that this is a place of power. It's the power of knowledge, of discipline, of resources. The same raw materials you use, the herbs from the earth, the grain from the fields, are transformed here into something more refined, more potent, and infinitely more predictable. The monks have taken the wild, chaotic magic of the natural world and systematized it. They have written the book on getting high, whether for the purpose of healing a body, fortifying a fasting soul, or simply brewing the best pint of ale for 100 miles. And, as the sound of the midday bell rings out calling the brothers to prayer, you turn back towards the village, your hangover feeling just a little bit more primitive. You've returned from your brief contemplation of the monastery, the quiet order of its walls, a fading memory, as you re-enter the familiar earthy chaos of your own life. The dull ache in your head is subsiding, replaced by a more immediate and pressing sensation, hunger. It's a constant companion, a low hum beneath the surface of everything you do. You head back into your hut, where a loaf of bread, the cornerstone of your existence, sits on the table. It's not a light, airy white bread. It's a heavy, dense, dark loaf made from rye, the only grain that reliably grows in the poor, damp soil of your region. Rye is hardy, it is dependable, it is life. But this year something is different. The harvest was wet. The grain sat in damp storage, and when it was milled, no one paid much mind to the small, purplish-black, horn-like growths sticking out of some of the ears of rye. They look a bit like a rooster's spur or a wolf's tooth. You just mill them all down together. Waste not, want not. That is the first and last rule of your world. You tear off a hunk of the sour, dark bread and chew it slowly, methodically. It tastes normal, earthy. It fills your belly. You eat it for breakfast, for your midday meal in the fields, and for supper. Your children eat it, your wife eats it, your neighbors eat it. It is the bread of life. And then a few days later, the fire begins. It starts not as a flame, but as a coldness. A strange creeping chill in your fingers and toes, even when you're huddled by the hearth. Then comes the tingling, a pins and needles sensation that soon feels like 1,000 ants crawling just beneath your skin. You scratch at your arms and legs, but there's nothing there. The feeling intensifies, and soon the crawling ants feel more like biting fire ants. The coldness in your limbs is replaced by a searing, agonizing heat. It is a fire in your very blood, an inferno raging from within that no water can quench. Your feet, your hands, your arms, your legs, they feel as though they are being roasted over a pit of coals slowly and sadistically. This is the affliction your people have come to know with dread as Ignis Sacer, the holy fire, or more commonly St. Anthony's fire. You look at your family and see the same horror reflected in their eyes. Your youngest child is wailing, clawing at his legs. Your wife is rocking back and forth, her face a mask of agony, and when you stumble outside for air, you see it's not just your family. The whole village is cursed. A woman is screaming in the street, holding up her hands, which are swollen and covered in fiery blisters. A man you've known your whole life is sitting on the ground, staring in numb horror at his foot, which is slowly turning a dark purplish black. It has begun to shrivel, to dry out, becoming hard and mummified right there on his body. Soon the dead flesh will separate from the living at the joint, and the blackened limb will simply fall off, often with no blood, as if it were a piece of dried wood. This is gangrenous ergotism, a poisoning caused by the wolf's tooth fungus you ground into your daily bread. The ergot alkaloids are powerful vasoconstrictors, meaning they squeeze your blood vessels shut, cutting off the flow of blood to your extremities. Your limbs are quite literally starving to death and rotting while still attached to you. A central tragic historical fact of the Middle Ages is that entire regions were periodically devastated by these outbreaks, leading to the establishment of the Order of St. Anthony, a brotherhood of monks dedicated solely to caring for the thousands of wretched sufferers of this disease. But the fire raging in your flesh is only one half of the hell unleashed by the tainted bread. For some of your neighbors, the poison takes a different path. It goes for the mind. You see a young man fall to the ground, his body arching backwards, his limbs flailing in a violent, uncontrollable seizure. He froths at the mouth, his eyes rolling back in his head as every muscle in his body contracts in a single agonizing spasm. This is convulsive ergotism. The fits come in waves, leaving the victim exhausted and terrified. And between these tormenting seizures, the visions begin. This is not the gentle, dreamy state you found in your garden, nor the boisterous cheer of the alehouse. This is a waking nightmare from which there is no escape. The world around you begins to twist and melt. The familiar faces of your neighbors contort into demonic, leering masks. You see monstrous creatures, half beast, half man, crawling from the shadows. The sky turns the color of blood. You hear whispers and shrieks that no one else can hear. You feel things claws, teeth fire on your skin. You are convinced with every fiber of your being that you have been dragged bodily into hell. You scream, you thrash, you babble about the demons that are tearing at your soul, because for you they are absolutely terrifyingly real. Your village becomes a madhouse. The line between the living and the damned seems to dissolve. People are either writhing in the silent agony of their burning limbs or screaming at the invisible horrors swarming around them. There is no cure. No one understands that the cause is the very bread they continue to eat. They see it as a divine punishment, a plague sent by an angry god or a curse laid by a witch. The social fabric, already stretched thin by hardship, simply tears apart. And now for a truly mind-bending piece of information, our strange tidbit for the evening. The fungus responsible for all this suffering, Claviceps purpurea, contains a family of chemicals called ergot alkaloids. For centuries, this fungus was nothing but a source of misery and terror. But in 1938, a Swiss chemist named Albert Hofmann was experimenting with these very alkaloids, trying to create a respiratory and circulatory stimulant. He synthesized a compound he called lysergic acid, diethylamide 25. It was the 25th in a series. It showed little promise and was shelved. 5 years later, in 1943, he accidentally absorbed a tiny amount through his fingertips. He was overcome by a not unpleasant intoxicated-like condition characterized by an extremely stimulated imagination. He had entirely by accident discovered the effects of LSD, the chemical that would define the psychedelic counterculture of the 1960s. Was born directly from the fungus that had created a literal hell on earth for your medieval ancestors. The same chemical core that sent you into visions of demons was later used by others to seek visions of God. The sheer scale and horror of these medieval outbreaks are hard for us to comprehend. Entire communities could be afflicted, leading to mass panic and social breakdown. It's no surprise that historians and scientists continue to debate the role ergotism may have played in other historical events, with some controversially suggesting it could have been a trigger for the bizarre behaviors seen in events like the Salem witch trials or other mass hysterias. Imagine a court where the accusers, the witnesses, and maybe even the judges are all suffering from mild ergot poisoning, experiencing paranoia, hallucinations, and muscle twitches. It's a chilling thought. For you, huddled in your hut, there are no scientific explanations. There is only the fire, the fits, and the fear. You look at the remaining half of the rye loaf on your table, the source of your strength, and you are now terrified of it. The bread that gives life has brought a living death. The mundane has become monstrous. This involuntary, terrifying journey into the depths of your own mind is a stark reminder that in your world, the line between survival and madness is impossibly, terrifyingly thin. You haven't chosen this trip, it has chosen you, and all you can do is pray to St. Anthony that it will end. Years have passed since the holy fire swept through your village. The memories of the burning limbs and the hellish visions have faded from a sharp, screaming terror into a dull, scar-like ache in the back of your mind. You survived. Many did not. The experience has left you with a profound and unsettling understanding of the body's fragility and a deep suspicion of the simple homespun remedies of your youth. The bread that was meant to sustain you had brought madness. You've learned that good intentions and folk wisdom are no match for the darker forces of nature. Now, life has brought you to a town, not a great city, but a bustling market town, larger than any place you've ever seen, a chaotic maze of narrow, unpaved streets crowded with merchants, pilgrims, and craftsmen. And when a persistent rattling cough settles deep in your chest, you don't just brew a simple horehound tea. You seek a professional. You seek the apothecary. His shop is easy to find. You just follow your nose. It's located on a cramped lane squeezed between a glover and a candlemaker, and it exudes a smell unlike any other. It's a complex, heady perfume of 100 different ingredients, all mingling in the air, the sweet spiciness of cinnamon, the sharp tang of vinegar, the dusty scent of dried herbs, and a strange, slightly metallic chemical undertone that you can't quite place. You push open the heavy oak door, a small bell announcing your arrival, and step out of the familiar stench of the street into a world of shadows and mystery. The shop is dark and cool. The only light comes from the open door and a single high, grime-covered window. As your eyes adjust, you see that every inch of wall space is covered with shelves and every shelf is crammed with vessels. There are fat earthenware jars, delicate blue and white porcelain pots from the Far East, stoppered glass bottles holding colourful liquids, and simple wooden boxes. Bundles of dried herbs, roots and flowers hang from the rafters like sleeping bats. In one corner you see a stuffed crocodile dangling from the ceiling, its leathery skin covered in a thick layer of dust. The apothecary believes it wards off disease and impresses the customers. It seems to be working. Behind a long wooden counter, the apothecary himself is busy with a mortar and pestle, the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of his grinding a constant steady heartbeat in the quiet shop. He is not a priest like the monks, nor a simple forager like the village cunning woman. He is a merchant and a craftsman. His trade is not in wool or iron, but in the very stuff of health and sickness, of life and death. You approach the counter, your hobnailed boots loud on the floorboards, and you wait. You feel a sense of awe, but also a prickle of fear. This place feels like the antechamber to another world, a place where the rules of nature can be bent and bargained with. You describe your cough, the fever that comes at night, the ache in your bones. He listens, nodding slowly, his face unreadable. He doesn't offer a simple diagnosis. Instead, he turns to the wall of jars behind him, his long fingers dancing over the labels written in a script you cannot read. He is a living catalogue of remedies. In one jar, he has chamomile to soothe the stomach. In another, powdered willow bark, a folk remedy for pain that actually works, containing a chemical very similar to modern aspirin. But in the jars next to those are far more potent substances. He has a small, heavily stoppered bottle of mercury, a deadly poison he sometimes uses in tiny amounts for skin ailments. He has a box of dried nightshade berries, which you remember from the monastery garden, used to dilate the eyes, or in a larger dose to kill a man with shocking speed. He pulls down a large, ornate jar. Inside is a thick, dark, treacly substance. This is his pride and joy, the pinnacle of his art, theriac. And here is a mainstream historical fact for you. Theriac was a medical superstar for nearly 2,000 years. Invented in ancient Rome as an antidote for poison, it evolved into a massively complex cure-all. The apothecary's recipe might have 60 or more ingredients, including exotic spices, honey wine, and more esoteric additions like powdered viper's flesh. But its most crucial active ingredient, the one that made it so famously effective at masking symptoms and making the patient feel better, was opium. He measures out a small dose for you, mixing it with honey and herbs into a little pill. It is the most expensive medicine you have ever purchased, but he assures you it will quiet your cough and bring you a restful, healing sleep. As he works, other customers come and go, and you begin to see the true nature of his business. You see how the line between medicine, recreation, poison, and magic is not a line at all. It is a blurry, indistinct smudge. A well-dressed servant enters and speaks quietly to the apothecary. He doesn't ask for medicine. He asks for something to liven the wine for his master's feast that evening. The apothecary nods, and from a different box he measures out a small pinch of a dried greenish herb, perhaps a bit of cannabis from the Levant, or maybe some henbane seeds known to induce giddiness, laughter, and a pleasant confusion. The price is high, but the servant pays without question. The same drawer that provides a sedative for the sick provides a party drug for the rich. A little later, A woman with a furtive, worried expression comes in. She complains of a toothache and asks for a sleeping draught. The apothecary sells her a small bottle of laudanum, the same opium tincture used by the monks, warning her to use only 2 drops in a cup of wine. The woman thanks him and hurries away. But you saw the look in her eyes. It wasn't the look of someone in physical pain. It was the hollow, haunted look of someone seeking a deeper, more permanent kind of sleep, a brief holiday from a life that has become unbearable. The draught is a medicine, but it is also an escape. A few drops bring calm. The whole bottle brings oblivion. This is the essence of the apothecary's trade. The substance is the same. The only thing that changes is the dosage and the intent. And sometimes the intent is far darker. A man with cold eyes and a heavy purse might enter and ask for a potent rat poison. The apothecary will sell him a small packet of arsenic, no questions asked. Whether it is actually used on rats is not his concern. He is a merchant. He sells what is requested. His shop is a quiet crossroads where the desperate, the decadent, and the deadly all come to buy their solutions. His shelves also cater to the superstitions of the age, which brings us to our strange and slightly gruesome tidbit. He pulls down a small dusty box. Inside is a dry, brownish powder. He explains to a wealthy customer that this is mummy powder, made from the ground-up remains of ancient Egyptian mummies imported all the way to Europe. It was considered a powerful medicine for everything from headaches to preventing the plague. You stare at the dust, trying to comprehend that you're looking at what's left of a person who lived thousands of years ago now, being sold as a remedy next to cloves and cinnamon. The complexity of these remedies, mixing potent psychoactive drugs with bizarre and inert ingredients, raises a question. Historians and pharmacologists still debate whether complex remedies like theriac were effective due to the synergistic action of their many ingredients, or if their legendary status was primarily due to the powerful symptom-masking effects of their main ingredient, opium. Was the viper's flesh and mummy powder just superstitious window dressing for the very real, very effective opioid high that made the patient forget their troubles? You finally leave the shop clutching your small, expensive pill of theriac. You have your medicine, but you leave with a sense of profound unease. The simple world of your garden, where a plant was either good for a cough or it wasn't, seems a lifetime away. Here in the city, things are more complicated. The apothecary's drawers hold the power to heal, to delight, to befuddle, to enslave, and to kill. And sometimes the only difference between one and the other is a pinch of powder and a handful of coins. You walk back into the bright, stinking street feeling that the world is a much more mysterious and dangerous place than you ever imagined. You walk away from the apothecary's shop, the small, heavy pill of theriac feeling like a secret in your palm. The air in the crowded town street seems thick with intrigue. The apothecary's business, operating in that grey space between healing and harm, has you thinking about those who practice an even older, more secretive art. These are the ones who don't have a shop with a sign, the ones who work from isolated cottages on the edge of the woods or down forgotten alleys. They are the heirs to a knowledge that predates the church, that predates the stone walls of the monastery. They are the cunning folk, the charmers, the healers. And as a new and creeping paranoia begins to infect the mind of Christendom, they are the ones who are starting to be called witches. You've heard the stories, of course. Everyone has. You've heard them from the pulpit where the priest warns of Satan's minions hiding in plain sight. You've heard them in the alehouse whispered after a few cups of the strong stuff. Tales of dark rituals of pacts signed in blood, and most fantastically of the great witch's Sabbat, a secret gathering held on a moonless night deep in the forest or atop a barren hill. There it is said they feast on unspeakable things. They dance wildly to the music of a goat-headed devil, and they renounce God. And to get there they fly. They soar through the night sky mounted on broomsticks or distaffs, their laughter mingling with the howling of the wind. It's an insane, impossible story, a fairy tale to frighten children. And yet when the witch-finders come and the accusations start, people confess to it. Under the strain of relentless questioning and the agony of torture, old women and young men alike admit to taking to the sky to attending these unholy gatherings. But what if their confessions, however they were obtained, weren't just madness and lies? What if they were describing an experience that to them felt absolutely and completely real? What if the secret to their flight wasn't in the broomstick, but in the greasy, greenish-brown paste they rubbed on it and on themselves? Let us imagine you are one of these people on the fringe. Perhaps you are just curious. Perhaps you are desperate. You have sought out one who holds the old knowledge, and she has given you a small earthenware pot containing the legendary unguentum sabati, the flying ointment. She has given you a warning: use only a little, be somewhere safe, and do not be afraid of what you see. You wait for the right time, a night when the moon is a hidden sliver and a storm is brewing on the horizon, the wind rattling your shutters. You are alone. With trembling fingers, you open the pot. The ointment smells rank, a mixture of pungent herbs, wood smoke, and something fatty, like lard or goose grease, which serves as the base. Looking at the dark, lumpy concoction, you can see flecks of dried leaves and roots mixed in. These are not the gentle, healing herbs from your garden. This is a far more dangerous pharmacopoeia. The key ingredients are a trifecta of plants from the same notorious family: deadly nightshade, henbane, and mandrake. Sometimes other poisons like wolfsbane or hemlock are added for good measure. These are the plants the apothecary keeps under lock and key, the ones the monks handle with extreme caution. Here they are the very heart of the magic. Following the instructions, you apply the ointment. The most important thing is to get it into your bloodstream. You rub the greasy paste onto your skin, focusing on areas where the blood is close to the surface: your temples, your neck, the thin skin of your wrists and armpits. The active ingredients in these plants, the tropane alkaloids, atropine, scopolamine and hyoscyamine, are fat-soluble, and they begin to seep through your skin directly into your body. The first thing you feel is your heart beginning to race, a wild, panicked drumming in your chest. Your mouth becomes bone dry, your throat feeling like sandpaper. Your vision begins to blur, the candlelight of your small room smearing into a soft, indistinct halo. You feel disoriented, dizzy, and a strange sense of detachment begins to creep over you, as if you are separating from your own body. This is the well-documented physiological effect of these chemicals. And this is our central historical fact for the evening. The ingredients repeatedly cited in recipes for flying ointments contain powerful psychoactive and deliriant compounds that, when absorbed through the skin, can produce profound hallucinations, including the distinct sensation of flight. You lie down on your pallet as the feeling intensifies. Your limbs feel both heavy as lead and light as air. The boundary between your body and the room around you begins to dissolve. And then it happens. A lurching, soaring sensation, as if you are being lifted upwards by an invisible current. You are no longer lying on your bed. You are airborne. You float towards the ceiling, which seems to melt away, revealing the churning, storm-dark sky above. You feel the wind whipping your hair, the chill of the night air on your skin. You are flying. There is no question, no doubt. The sensation is as real as the feeling of the floor beneath your feet just moments ago. Your room, your village, the entire world you know shrinks away below you. You soar over forests and fields, the landscape illuminated by flashes of lightning. The experience is exhilarating, terrifying, and utterly convincing. Other shapes appear in the sky alongside you, the spirits, demons, or fellow travelers you were expecting to see. You might experience erotic, ecstatic visions or visions of profound terror. The alkaloids are not gentle guides. They are agents of chaos, dredging up the deepest contents of your subconscious and projecting them onto the screen of your mind. You are not watching a dream. You are living it. And what about the broomstick? This is where we find our quirky and slightly scandalous tidbit. For the ointment to be absorbed most efficiently, it needed to be applied to mucous membranes. The instructions, often couched in euphemism, would suggest applying it to one's private parts. A broomstick, a distaff, or any smooth rounded piece of wood would serve as a perfect applicator for this. So you can imagine a person in this highly suggestible and delirious state applying the ointment with a staff or broom handle. The physical sensation of straddling the object becomes fused with the overwhelming hallucinatory sensation of flight. You are literally riding the broomstick as you soar through your own internal landscape. The legend is not born from thin air, but from a potent combination of pharmacology and practical application. Of course, this experience is fraught with peril. Use too much ointment, and the racing heart can lead to cardiac arrest. The line between a visionary flight and a final fatal overdose is terrifyingly thin. It's a form of Russian roulette played with poisonous herbs. But for those seeking power escape or a glimpse into another world, it's a risk they are willing to take. This pharmacological explanation for the witch's flight has been a topic of intense discussion for decades. Anthropologists and historians have long debated whether the stories of the Sabbat were purely the product of torture and religious hysteria, or if they were based on real underlying folk rituals involving these psychoactive ointments. It's likely a tangled mixture of both. The Church provided the demonic narrative, the Inquisitors extracted the confessions, but the raw experiential core of the flight may have come from the real, tangible effects of these powerful plants, a secret folk tradition that was twisted and demonized by the authorities. Your flight lasts for hours, but in reality, you never left your bed. You've been lying in a deep, trance-like stupor, your body twitching, perhaps muttering to yourself, completely lost in a world of your own creation. When you finally return to your senses, the sun is rising, and you are left with the vivid, unshakable memory of your journey. You didn't dream it, you did it. You flew. And when the witch-finders come, when they ask you under duress if you flew to the Sabbat, you might just tell them yes, because in your mind it is the absolute truth. The sun is high and sharp in the sky, a stark contrast to the swirling nocturnal world you've just left behind. Your heart has returned to its normal rhythm, but your mind is still reeling, trying to process the phantom sensation of wind on your skin, the memory of soaring over a moonlit, monstrous landscape. The flying ointment worked. It worked in a way that feels more real than a dream, a visceral truth that has been imprinted onto your soul. And now, in the cold light of day, you find yourself obsessed with the source of that terrible, exhilarating power. It wasn't a pact or a prayer, it was the plants. The greasy, foul-smelling paste was a vessel, a delivery system for the potent spirits of 3 botanical witches, the infamous sisters of the Solanaceae family. To truly understand the flight, you must understand them. This plant family, the nightshades, is a strange and contradictory one. In the centuries to come, it will give the world some of its most beloved and nourishing foods, the potato, the tomato, the pepper. But here in your time, the most famous members of the family are not known for feeding life, but for twisting it for their power to heal, to madden, and to kill. They are the trinity at the heart of the witch's pharmacopoeia. Let's meet them one by one. First is Henbane Hyoscyamus niger. Imagine a plant that looks as unpleasant as its reputation. It's covered in sticky, greasy hairs that feel slightly repulsive to the touch, and it gives off a foul, stupefying odor. Its flowers are its most distinctive feature. Pale, sickly yellow bells, their throats webbed with a network of dark purple veins, giving them the unsettling appearance of a bloodshot eye. The ancient Greeks called it the insane plant, and for good reason. It was said that the priestesses at the Oracle of Delphi would breathe in the smoke of burning henbane seeds to receive their prophecies. It is a plant of madness and divination. The spirit within henbane, its particular psychoactive signature, is one of chaotic disorientation. It is rich in the alkaloids hyoscyamine and scopolamine. If the flying ointment sent you soaring henbane is what would make you forget you were ever human to begin with. Ingesting it, even in a small dose, brings on a profound delirium. You wouldn't just see things that aren't there, you would lose the very anchor of your own identity. You might believe you are an animal, a wolf or a bird, and behave as such. The world would lose its familiar shape, becoming a swirling, nonsensical soup of disconnected images and sounds. It doesn't so much grant a vision as it does shatter the mirror of reality, leaving you to stare at the jagged, nonsensical pieces. It is the chosen tool for hexes that cause madness, the key ingredient in a potion meant to make a rival seem possessed. Of the three sisters, henbane is the chaotic, unpredictable one. Next, you meet the dark queen of the trio, Atropa belladonna, deadly nightshade. Unlike the foul henbane, she is seductively beautiful. Her leaves are a lush, deep green, her flowers are solitary, drooping bells of a dusky purple, and her fruit is her most dangerous lure, a single shiny black berry, plump and sweet-looking, the size of a small cherry. A child might see it in a hedgerow and be tempted to taste its deadly sweetness. A few berries are enough to kill them. Her very name, Atropa, is taken from Atropos, the eldest of the three Greek fates, the one who holds the shears and cuts the thread of human life. This plant is the source of atropine, a powerful alkaloid that wages war on your nervous system. Its most famous use, which gives it its other name, belladonna, is a perfect and true historical fact. For centuries, but particularly during the Italian Renaissance, women would use a cosmetic preparation of nightshade. They would carefully squeeze a tiny drop of its juice into their eyes. The atropine would block the nerve signals that control the iris, causing their pupils to dilate dramatically. The result was a dark, deep, doe-eyed look that was considered intensely beautiful and alluring. They were literally using a deadly poison for the sake of fashion. But this cosmetic use belies the plant's true power. When used in the ointment, the belladonna's spirit is one of pure, unadulterated horror. It is the architect of nightmares. It fills your hallucinations with phantoms, with skeletal figures and grasping shadows. It is the plant that makes you feel the presence of the dead, that whispers your deepest fears into your ear. While henbane brings madness, belladonna brings terror. And finally, you come to the strangest and most legendary of them all, Mandragora officinarum, the mandrake. This plant is a creature of the earth barely showing itself above ground. All you might see is a rosette of broad, dark leaves lying flat against the soil. Its magic, its power, its entire identity is in its root. When you dig it up, you find a thick, fleshy, parsnip-like root that is often forked, giving it the unmistakable appearance of a small, malformed human being, a homunculus. This uncanny resemblance is the source of its immense magical reputation and our strange tidbit for the evening. The folklore surrounding the mandrake is a testament to its power. It was believed that the plant was a conscious being, and that when it was pulled from the earth, it would let out a shriek so terrible, so piercing, that any human who heard it would die instantly. This led to wonderfully elaborate and bizarre harvesting methods. A sorcerer would plug his ears with wax, carefully loosen the soil around the mandrake, and then tie a strong cord from the plant's neck to the collar of a dog, usually one that was black and had been starved for a day. The sorcerer would then retreat to a safe distance and call the dog, offering it a piece of meat. The hungry animal would lunge for the food, pulling the mandrake root from the ground. The dog would hear the scream and fall dead, a necessary sacrifice, leaving the precious root for the sorcerer to collect in safety. The spirit of the mandrake is one of deep, death-like trance. Its alkaloids are powerfully sedative and hallucinogenic. It was used as a surgical anesthetic in the ancient world, plunging the patient into a stupor so deep they would not feel the knife. In a magical context, it was believed to induce prophetic dreams and out-of-body experiences. To consume mandrake was to die a little death, to journey into the underworld and return with its secrets. It was also considered a potent aphrodisiac, a catalyst for both fertility and lust. Of the three sisters, mandrake is the gatekeeper to the land of the dead and the dream world. These three plants, henbane, nightshade, and mandrake, form the toxic soul of the flying ointment. Botanists and folklorists still debate how the incredibly detailed and widespread legends surrounding plants like the mandrake developed, questioning whether they were pure fantasy or perhaps embellished interpretations of the plant's very real and very strange psychoactive effects. Did the story of the fatal scream arise because the delirium caused by the plant was so profound it felt like a brush with death itself? As you contemplate these three powerful plant spirits, you understand the flying ointment on a deeper level. It is not just one experience. It is a symphony of madness, terror, and soul flight, each plant playing its part. You realize that the cunning woman who brews such a concoction is not merely mixing leaves and roots. She is a chemist of the soul, a conductor of an orchestra of nightmares and ecstasies, blending the chaotic ravings of henbane, the ghostly terrors of nightshade, and the profound, deathly trance of the mandrake into a single, transformative experience. You look at the weeds in the hedgerow with a newfound respect and a deep, abiding fear. The world is full of sleeping magic waiting in the earth for a hand brave or foolish enough to awaken it. You leave the world of furtive witches and their sinister gardens behind. The knowledge of their poisonous plants feels heavy in your mind, a secret of the earthbound of those who work their magic in shadows and whispers. Now we must travel, leave the ploughed fields and dusty towns of mainland Europe behind us. Our journey takes us north to a colder, harder, and wilder world. The air grows sharp and clean, tasting of salt and pine. You are no longer a peasant or a townsman. You are standing on the deck of a longship, the timbers groaning rhythmically beneath your feet as it cuts through the grey, swelling waves of the North Sea. The dragon-headed prow rears and plunges, and the cold spray that hits your face feels like a baptism into a different reality. You are a Norseman, a warrior, and your magic is not found in ointments, but in blood, in steel, and in a terrifying sacred rage. Your world is one of iron and wood, of long dark winters and brief glorious summers. Your gods are gods of war, of poetry, and of brutal, unpredictable power. And among your fellow warriors there is a certain group who are treated with a mixture of awe and profound fear. They are the berserkers. They are Odin's chosen men who seem to be able to channel the spirit of a wild beast, most often a bear, in the heat of battle. You've seen it happen. Before the raid begins, as your longship scrapes against the shore of some foreign land, you see the change come over them. It starts with a trembling, a deep shudder that seems to rack their entire body. Their teeth begin to chatter not from cold, but from something building within them. A low groan escapes their lips, a sound that is not entirely human. Their eyes glaze over, looking at something far beyond the present moment. Then, as the war horns blow, they begin to bite at the iron rims of their shields, the sound of teeth grinding on metal, setting your own nerves on edge. They let out a great roaring howl, the sound of a beast, and they tear off their mail shirts. Some charge into the fray completely bare-chested, which is how they may have gotten their name berserker, a word that might mean bear shirt or bare shirt. When the berserker gang, the berserker rage is upon them, they are a force of nature. They smash through the enemy's shield wall with a strength that seems impossible. They seem to feel no pain. You've seen a berserker take a sword cut to the arm or a spear thrust to the leg and simply keep fighting, roaring with fury, seemingly unaware of a wound that would send any other man to the ground. They are worth 10 ordinary warriors, a tide of pure, terrifying violence that shatters enemy morale. They are your greatest weapon. They are also deeply unsettling. There is no joy in their rage, only a terrifying, all-consuming fury that seems to burn away their very humanity. And when the battle is over and the adrenaline of the fight has faded, the price they pay becomes clear. They collapse. They fall into a profound state of exhaustion, of weakness and confusion that can last for a day or more, their minds and bodies completely spent by the inner storm they have unleashed. What is the source of this incredible, terrible power? Was it a gift from the All-Father Odin? Or did it come from something more tangible? Something they consumed before the battle began? The true cause of the berserker fury remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the Viking Age. Scholars and historians fiercely debate the merits of each theory, the psychological, the fungal, and the botanical. And the truth is, we may never know for certain what turned these men into monsters on the battlefield. One theory suggests it was not a drug at all, but a form of self-induced hysteria. That these warriors, through a combination of ritual chanting and a kind of battle-focused meditation, could deliberately work themselves into a trance state. They whipped themselves into a frenzy, a state of mind where fear and pain were temporarily suspended, replaced by an overwhelming tide of aggression. This is not impossible. Many warrior cultures throughout history have used similar psychological techniques to prepare for combat. They were perhaps masters of their own adrenaline. But for many, this psychological explanation doesn't quite account for the sheer animalistic nature of the rage or the profound physical crash that came afterwards. This leads to the most famous and widely discussed theory, which is our historical fact for this section, even if it is a controversial one. This is the theory that the berserker's rage was fueled by a mushroom, the iconic red and white-capped Amanita muscaria, or fly agaric. You can picture it before the raid. A shaman or chieftain distributes dried pieces of the sacred mushroom to the chosen warriors. They chew the leathery flesh, and within the hour the world begins to change. The active compounds, ibotenic acid and muscimol, would flood their brains, causing euphoria, a distortion of sensory perception, making objects appear larger or smaller, and crucially, a profound disconnect from fear. This, combined with a surge of manic energy and physical strength, could certainly look like a berserker rage. And this mushroom theory comes with a wonderfully bizarre and quirky tidbit. The human body is remarkably good at processing the Amanita muscaria mushroom. It metabolizes the more toxic ibotenic acid into the less toxic, more purely psychoactive muscimol. A significant amount of this refined compound is then excreted in the urine. in some shamanic cultures, particularly in Siberia, where this mushroom has a long history of use. It was common practice for people to drink the urine of someone who had eaten the mushroom, allowing them to experience the effects with fewer negative side effects like nausea. It's a strange and startling image, but one can't help but picture a group of Viking warriors psyching themselves up for battle by passing around a helmet filled with hallucinogenic pee. It's a form of recycling that is both efficient and profoundly weird. However, the mushroom theory isn't perfect. The effects of Amanita muscaria can be unpredictable, sometimes leading to lethargy or nausea rather than rage. This has led some researchers to champion a different culprit, a plant you've just recently met, henbane. Think back to its effects, the ones described by the cunning women and apothecaries. It causes a flushed face, a loss of inhibition, irrational and aggressive behavior, delirium, and a blurring of vision followed by a long period of stupor and exhaustion. The description of henbane poisoning is a disturbingly close match for the description of the Berserker gang and its aftermath. It's a compelling idea, made even more so by the fact that the seeds of henbane have been found in several Viking graves in Denmark, including one that appeared to be that of a vulva, a Norse seeress or sorceress. It seems this plant was known and used by the Vikings perhaps as a ritual intoxicant, a painkiller, or something more. So, which was it? Was it a psychological storm, a fungal fury, or a botanical madness? Perhaps it was a combination of all three. Perhaps only certain warrior lodges used a substance while others relied on pure fervor. You look at the berserker on your ship, the one who is now sitting quietly staring at the grey waves, looking as placid as any other man. It's impossible to tell what beast sleeps inside him or what key is required to unlock its cage. You only know that when you land, you will be glad he is on your side. His rage is a tool, a weapon forged in the strange fires of either the mind, the mushroom, or the witch's weed. It is the terrifying spirit of your age, a force as wild and unpredictable as the northern seas themselves. The howling of the northern wind fades, replaced by a warm, dry breeze that carries the scent of dust and spices. The grey sea gives way to a landscape of sun-baked earth of ochre and sand. We have left the world of Viking warriors far behind, travelling south and east, following the trade routes, until we arrive in a place that is the vibrant, beating heart of civilization. You are standing at the gates of one of the great cities of the medieval Islamic world, perhaps Baghdad, the city of scholars, or Cairo, the jewel of the Nile. The sheer scale and energy of the place is overwhelming. The streets are a bustling, churning river of humanity, merchants in fine silks, scholars in simple robes, soldiers with curved scimitars, and people from every corner of the known world. The air hums with the murmur of 100 different languages, the clang of coppersmiths' hammers, and 5 times a day the beautiful resonant call to prayer that echoes from the minarets of the city's magnificent mosques. This is a world dedicated to knowledge, to art, to science. While Europe is still struggling to emerge from a long period of decline, the libraries here hold the wisdom of the ancient Greeks, the scientific discoveries of Persian astronomers, the mathematical genius of Indian scholars. It is a sophisticated, cosmopolitan, and deeply religious society. And that religion, Islam, has a profound impact on how people here choose to alter their consciousness. Your Viking companions from the last part of our journey would find the ale halls they so loved conspicuously absent. Wine and all other alcoholic beverages known as khamr are explicitly forbidden by the Holy Quran. For the devout Muslim, intoxication through drink is a path away from God. This prohibition on alcohol, while not always perfectly observed in the privacy of a wealthy caliph's palace, fundamentally shaped the social landscape of pleasure and escape. It created a void. The human desire for release, for a different perspective, for a moment of giddy joy, did not simply vanish with the absence of wine. Instead, it found a new and willing partner, a humble green plant that grew wild in the hills and was cultivated in secret gardens. Cannabis. More specifically, its potent concentrated resin, which you know by the name it was given here, hashish. You, a curious traveller, are invited by a new acquaintance, a poet with laughing eyes, to his home. You pass through a heavy wooden door in a nondescript wall and suddenly find yourself in a hidden shaded courtyard. A small fountain bubbles in the centre, the water cooling the air. The scent of jasmine hangs heavy on the breeze. There are no raucous drinking songs here, no brawling warriors. The atmosphere is one of languid peace and quiet conversation. Your host offers you not a cup of wine, but a small sweet confection, a sticky ball of dates, nuts, honey and spices, all mixed with a dark greenish-brown paste. This is majun, a popular way of consuming the fabled hashish. You eat the sweet, your first taste of this legendary substance. For a long time, nothing happens. You sip mint tea and listen to the poet recite verses about love and the beauty of a rose. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the world begins to change. The intricate geometric patterns on the tiles of the courtyard seem to subtly shift and breathe. The sound of the bubbling fountain becomes a piece of complex, fascinating music. A fit of giggles wells up inside you for no reason at all, and you see it reflected in the smiling faces of the others in the circle. Time itself seems to stretch and become elastic. A minute can feel like an hour, and an hour can pass in what feels like a moment. This is the hashish high. It is not the violent outward explosion of the berserker's rage, nor the terrifying demonic delirium of the witch's ointment. It is a gentle inward journey. Your thoughts become philosophical, profound, and often profoundly silly. You find yourself fascinated by the smallest details, the way the light catches a drop of water, the intricate flight of a bee. It is an intoxicant that encourages contemplation, conversation, and a sense of shared, peaceful euphoria. It's easy to see how it became popular not just for recreation, but among certain mystical sects of Islam, the Sufis. A popular legend credits its discovery to the Sufi master Haidar, who, it is said, noticed the plant's blissful effects and encouraged his disciples to use it to help them cast off worldly cares and achieve a state of spiritual ecstasy. While the use of alcohol was generally a private affair for the wealthy who dared to flout religious law, a key historical fact is that hashish was enjoyed more openly and by a wider array of social classes. It became the intoxicant of the poets, the mystics, and the common man. Because it was eaten rather than smoked, its use was discreet. There was no telltale smoke or smell. A person could carry a few sweet balls of majun in their pocket and achieve a state of blissful intoxication without anyone being the wiser. But this new substance did not exist without controversy. Islamic scholars and jurists engaged in a long and complex debate over whether cannabis should be forbidden like wine. Since it wasn't explicitly mentioned in the Quran, its status remained a contentious grey area for centuries, with some condemning it as a harmful intoxicant that addled the mind and led to idleness, and others defending it as a harmless, joyful herb, a gift from God not included in the ban on alcohol. This debate reveals a deep cultural conversation about pleasure, piety, and the interpretation of sacred law. The reputation of hashish in the West, however, was shaped by a far more sinister and sensational story. This brings us to our quirky and frankly legendary tidbit for the evening, the tale of the hashishin, or the assassins. The story made famous in Europe by the traveller Marco Polo tells of a mysterious leader in the mountains of Persia named Hassan-i Sabah, the Old Man of the Mountain. He led a radical sect of Ismaili Muslims who were feared throughout the region. According to the legend, to recruit his fanatical followers, he would use hashish to drug them into a deep sleep. They would then be carried to a secret valley, a garden of earthly delights filled with beautiful pavilions, flowing streams of milk and honey, and lovely maidens. When the young warrior awoke in this paradise, he was told that he was having a glimpse of the heaven that awaited him if he faithfully served his master. After a few days of blissful indulgence, he would be drugged again and returned to his normal life, now filled with an unshakable desire to return to that paradise, a desire that made him a fearless and utterly loyal assassin, willing to die to complete his mission. It's an incredible story, and it is almost certainly a fabrication, a piece of propaganda meant to demonize a rival power. But the legend stuck, and the word hashishin, hashish user, is widely, if incorrectly, believed to be the origin of our modern word assassin. Back in the quiet courtyard, the sun begins to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The effects of the hashish are soft and gentle now, a feeling of deep contentment and peace. You understand that this substance has shaped the culture here, just as profoundly as ale shaped the world you came from. It has fueled poetry, inspired mystical searching, and provided a quiet, giggling escape from the pressures of life, all while navigating a complex religious and legal landscape. It is a softer, more introspective high for a softer, more introspective world. The scent of jasmine and the soft bubbling of the courtyard fountain begin to fade. Your journey continues, but this time you are not the one moving. We are going to stay here in this great crossroads of a city and watch as something else makes the long, arduous journey across the known world. We're leaving behind the giggling, gentle high of hashish to follow the path of a much older, darker, and more powerful substance. You are in the city's sprawling, chaotic caravanserai, the terminus of the Great Silk Road. Here the air is thick with the smell of camels, of exotic spices, of leather and dust. You watch as a caravan, having endured months of travel across deserts and mountains, finally unloads its precious cargo. Amidst the bales of shimmering silk, the chests of porcelain, and the sacks of pepper and cloves, there is a smaller, more heavily guarded coffer. Inside are not jewels or gold, but small, dark, heavy cakes of a gummy resin. They are stamped with the intricate mark of a Persian merchant, and they are worth more than their weight in silver. This is afyun. In Europe, it will be called opium. This substance is no new discovery. Its story is woven into the very fabric of human civilization. This is our mainstream historical fact for the evening. The opium poppy Papaver somniferum is one of the oldest medicinal plants known to humankind. The ancient Sumerians, thousands of years before your time, cultivated it in the Fertile Crescent and called it Hulgil, the joy plant. The ancient Egyptians mixed it into a sedative brew called kefai, using it in their temples and their tombs. The physicians of ancient Greece and Rome, men like Hippocrates and Galen, wrote of it extensively, hailing it as the most powerful painkiller in existence, a panacea they called the tears of the moon. The little brown cake in that merchant's coffer is not just a drug. It is a direct link to the ancient world, a piece of condensed history. Its journey begins far to the east in the poppy fields of Persia, or the lands even farther beyond. Picture the scene. In the cool of the evening after the sun has set, workers move through the fields of pale, beautiful flowers. They come to the unripe seed pods, the swollen green globes left after the petals have fallen. With a small multi-bladed knife, they make a series of delicate shallow cuts into the skin of the pod. They must be careful not to cut too deep. A milky white latex-like sap begins to ooze from the cuts, beading up on the surface. They leave it there overnight. In the cool, dry air, the sap thickens, darkens, and hardens into a brownish-black, sticky gum. The next morning, before the sun gets too hot, they return and carefully scrape this raw opium from each pod. It is a slow, laborious, and delicate harvest. This raw gum is then collected, pressed into cakes, and wrapped in poppy leaves or cloth. And so it begins its long trek west. It joins the great caravans that are the lifeblood of your world. It travels on the backs of camels across the vast and unforgiving deserts of Central Asia, through treacherous mountain passes, and into the bustling markets of the Islamic Golden Age. Here in cities like Baghdad and Cairo, it is received with a kind of reverence. While hashish is the stuff of poets and giggling mystics, opium is the domain of the physician. The scholars here have read Galen. They know of opium's power. It is the king of medicines, the final answer to pain. An Arab physician without opium in his kit is like a soldier without a sword. They use it to soothe the agony of kidney stones, to quiet the racking cough of consumption, and to stop the deadly fluid loss of dysentery. It is quite simply the most effective medicine in the world, and it is a key ingredient in the era's most complex and famous remedies. Remember the theriac from the apothecary's shop, that complex brew of viper's flesh and 100 other ingredients. That recipe was preserved and perfected here in the great cities of the Islamic world, and its power, its efficacy, its very reputation rested on the generous quantity of opium that formed its base. This brings us to our quirky tidbit, the legend of theriac's precursor, the Mithridate. The story goes that King Mithridates VI, a ruler in ancient Anatolia, was so terrified of being poisoned by his enemies that he embarked on a bizarre regimen of self-immunization. He would allegedly ingest a tiny, non-lethal dose of every known poison every single day, hoping to build up a tolerance. He combined this with a complex daily antidote of his own invention, the key ingredient of which was a healthy dose of opium. So you have this paranoid king microdosing on snake venom and nightshade, all balanced by the powerful calming hand of the poppy. As opium sits in the apothecary's jars and physicians' pouches in the Islamic world, its dual nature is well understood. It is a healer, but it is also a seducer. The line between medicine and pleasure is, as always, a thin one. Historians and archaeologists debate the true extent of recreational opium use in the medieval world, as the line between seeking relief from the constant pain of life and seeking pure pleasure was so blurred. Was a patient taking an opium-laced medicine for their melancholy, simply treating a disease, or were they engaging in a prescribed form of narcotic escapism? The answer is probably both. The profound dreamlike euphoria it offered was a powerful lure, a temporary heaven for those whose lives were a daily hell. And its ability to create a deep physical dependence in the user was also noted by the more astute physicians. From the great ports of the Levant, like Alexandria and Antioch, the opium completes the final leg of its journey. It is loaded onto the ships of Venetian and Genoese merchants who brave the pirates and the storms of the Mediterranean to bring the treasures of the East to Europe. Here in your European world, opium is even rarer, more exotic and more expensive. It is a substance of immense prestige. The small amount that the monks in the monastery might possess, or the larger stock held by the wealthy town apothecary, likely arrived on one of these ships. It is a symbol of a sophisticated, almost magical form of medicine, a world away from the simple herbal remedies of the village. You watch as the merchant's coffer is sold to a wealthy physician, the transaction handled with the gravity befitting such a potent and valuable commodity. That small, dark brick of resin is the culmination of 1,000 stories. It holds the sweat of the poppy farmer, the dust of the desert, the knowledge of the ancient Greeks and the calculations of the Arab doctors. It is the joy plant, the tear of the moon, the healer, the enslaver. And its long, slow journey across your world is just one chapter in its epic and often tragic story. The heavy, sweet and dangerous scent of opium fades as the merchant's coffer is locked away. You are still in a port city, perhaps Venice with its canals, or Genoa perched on its hillside, a gateway where the wonders of the East flow into Europe. You see the fine silks, the delicate porcelain, the exotic spices. You see the powerful medicines and the secret pleasures locked in the chests of the apothecaries. But now I want you to look away from those rare and expensive luxuries. Look at the mundane, the essential, the very fabric of the world around you. Look at the ship that brought the opium here. Look at the thick, heavy ropes that hold it to the dock ropes, strong enough to withstand a storm at sea. Look at the towering masts held in place by a complex web of rigging. Look at the massive patched canvas sails capable of catching the wind and driving this vessel across the world. Now look at the clothes of the sailor coiling that rope. His rough, durable shirt and trousers are not made of soft cotton or wool. All of it. The ropes, the sails, the caulking between the ship's timbers. The sailor's very clothes is made from the same humble, incredibly versatile plant. Hemp. And you realize in a flash that while opium may be the exotic treasure in the hold, the entire ship, the entire enterprise of global trade is literally held together by the cannabis plant. While you've heard of cannabis as the source of the dreamy hashish in the faraway Islamic world here in Europe, its identity is entirely different. It is not a luxury. It is a necessity. It is not a tool for inward journeys. It is the raw material of empire and industry. This is the great defining historical fact of cannabis in your world. For centuries, hemp was one of the most important agricultural and strategic commodities in all of Europe. Every king with a navy, every merchant with a fleet, every farmer with a field understood its value. You can picture the fields of it growing tall and dense across the continent. It's a hardy, vigorous plant shooting up to 12 feet high in a single season, its thick, fibrous stalks swaying in the wind. The cultivation is laborious. The stalks are harvested, then left to soak in water for weeks in a process called retting, which creates a truly foul smell, but allows the fibers to be separated from the woody core. These long, strong fibers are then beaten, combed, and spun into thread. This thread is twisted into the ropes that rig the ships of exploration, woven into the canvas that powers them, and stitched into the rough, practical clothing of the working class. Its seeds are pressed for oil to light lamps, and the seed cake that is left over is fed to livestock. The seeds themselves are a good source of protein for people often boiled into a porridge or gruel during lean times. The cannabis plant in the form of hemp is everywhere. It is a constant, familiar and fundamentally practical part of your life, which raises a fascinating question. Did anyone in your world know its other secret? With millions of people cultivating, harvesting and processing this plant for generations, were they aware of its psychoactive properties? The answer is complicated and mysterious, a puzzle that historians are still trying to piece together. The written record, created mostly by monks and the upper classes, is strangely quiet on the subject. But there are whispers, hints, and clues. The people working most closely with the plant, the farmers and the rope makers, would have spent their days covered in its sticky, aromatic resin. It's hard to imagine that no one ever noticed the strange light-headed feeling that came after a long day of harvesting the flowering tops. In the world of folk medicine outside the official texts of the physicians, the plant was known. The great 12th century abbess and herbalist Hildegard von Bingen wrote that hemp could be used to treat headaches, though she also warned it could cause them. She recognized its power, even if she framed it purely in medicinal terms. It was one of the many herbs in the kit of the local cunning woman, used perhaps in a poultice to soothe an aching joint, or in a brew to ease the pain of childbirth. But why was it never as popular as ale or wine? Why didn't a European hashish culture emerge? Part of the answer is likely botanical. The varieties of cannabis grown in Europe's cooler, damper climate were specifically cultivated for their long, strong fibers. This is cannabis sativa. These plants, while rich in fiber, were likely much lower in the psychoactive compound THC than their cousin cannabis indica, which was grown in the warmer, sunnier climates of Persia and India to produce the potent resin for hashish. The buzz from European hemp might have been mild, sleepy, and often accompanied by a headache not nearly as pleasant as the warm social glow of alcohol. Furthermore, the culture of smoking was not widespread. You'd have to eat it, and without the sophisticated recipes for Majun, it would likely be an unpleasant, oily mouthful. Still, the plant retained an aura of magic and ritual in folk traditions, which gives us our quirky tidbit. In some rural parts of Europe, there were strange hemp-sowing rituals tied to fertility and divination. On a certain night of the year, a young woman who wanted to know who her future husband would be might be instructed to go out at midnight, sometimes naked, and sow a handful of hemp seeds in a field while chanting a little rhyme, something like, "Hemp seed I sow, hemp seed I sow, and he that must be my true love, come after me and mow." The vision of her future husband would then supposedly appear to her. While this is clearly a form of sympathetic magic sowing seeds to ensure fertility in marriage, it's fascinating that this psychoactive plant was chosen as the medium for a visionary magical ritual. This all leads us to the central unanswered question. Historians continue to debate the extent to which cannabis was used as an intoxicant in medieval Europe. Was its near absence from the records a sign that it was rarely used, or was its use so common and unremarkable among the peasantry that it simply wasn't worth writing about by the literate elite? No one wrote about the specific joys of eating cabbage either, but everyone did it. Perhaps a mild hemp-induced buzz was just another small, unrecorded part of a peasant's life. So you stand on the docks looking at this plant in its two forms. On the one hand, you have the exotic opium, the dark and dreamy queen of the East arriving in a treasure chest. On the other, you have the very ropes holding the ship to the shore, the mundane, ubiquitous and utterly essential hemp. You have untangled the complicated truth. The cannabis plant was not a foreign substance in medieval Europe. It was a cornerstone of civilization. Its other more secret use may not have been as glamorous or as potent as its Eastern counterpart, but the knowledge of its power was there, hiding in plain sight, a quiet green secret woven into the very fabric of your world. The familiar world of medieval Europe, with its castles, cathedrals, and bustling ports, begins to feel small. The stories of its drugs, the ale, the ointments, the opium are all threads in a single tapestry. Now I want you to pull on a different thread entirely. Let's cast our minds across the vast, terrifying, and unknown expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. Imagine a world without iron, without horses, without the wheel, but with a relationship to the spirit world and the plants that grant access to it that is deeper and more profound than anything we have yet encountered. We are traveling to the Americas before the arrival of the European ships to glimpse the powerful and sacred rituals that have been practiced here for thousands of years. You are no longer in a damp, smoky hut. You are in a rainforest, the air thick with the scent of damp earth, night-blooming orchids, and the ozone tang of an approaching rainstorm. The darkness here is not empty. It is alive, a cacophony of unseen insects, the guttural call of a monkey, the distant cry of a night bird. The people here do not see the plants in their forests as mere medicines for the body or as tools for illicit magic. Certain plants are seen as divine as doorways. They are a sacrament, a technology for traveling in consciousness, a direct line of communication to the gods and the spirits. They are entheogens, a word that means generating the divine within. Tonight, you have been invited to a sacred ceremony. You are in the heart of the mighty Aztec Empire. The ritual is led by a shaman, a priest, who knows the secret paths of the spirit world. He is not a feared and outcast witch. He is a respected and essential member of the community. In the center of a fire-lit circle, he holds a small bowl containing a handful of dried brownish mushrooms. You know them by their reverent name, Teonanacatl, the flesh of the gods. This is a species of psilocybin mushroom, and a core mainstream historical fact is that its ritual use was central to the spiritual life of many Mesoamerican peoples. A practice well documented by the Spanish friars who first witnessed it with a mixture of terror and awe. The shaman chants in the Nahuatl tongue a rhythmic hypnotic invocation to the gods. You are given a few of the dried mushrooms. They taste earthy, bitter, and slightly foul. You chew them slowly and swallow as the others in the circle do the same. For a long time there is only the firelight, the chanting, and the living darkness of the jungle. Then you feel it. A strange energy begins to hum at the base of your spine. When you close your eyes, intricate shimmering geometric patterns begin to form and dance behind your eyelids, more complex and beautiful than any mosaic you have ever seen. When you open your eyes again, the world is transformed. The flames of the fire are not just orange and yellow, but 1,000 impossible hues of living, breathing color. The faces of your companions seem ancient and wise, their features shifting subtly. The shaman's chant is no longer just a sound. You can see it, a flowing ribbon of colored light weaving through the air. The boundary between you and the world dissolves. You are the fire, you are the jungle, you are the stars that have appeared through a break in the canopy above. And then the visions come. You are flying not on a broomstick, but on the back of a great feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, soaring over a city of gold. You witness the creation of the world. You see the sun, God Huitzilopochtli, in his full, terrifying glory. The experience is not gentle. It is overwhelming awesome in the truest sense of the word, a direct encounter with the sacred and terrifying power of the cosmos. This is not the only path to the spirit world. The Aztecs and their neighbors also revered the seeds of a species of morning glory, which they called Ololiuqui. These tiny black seeds containing a chemical cousin of LSD were used for divination. A shaman would ingest them to find lost objects, diagnose the spiritual cause of a disease, or receive prophecies. Their effect was said to be less of a fiery visual explosion and more of a deep, hypnotic, dreamlike state, a journey into the twilight of the mind. Now let us travel north to the deserts of what will one day be Mexico and the American Southwest. Here, another sacred plant has been used in ceremonies for at least 5,000 years. It is a small, spineless cactus that grows low to the ground, peyote. The top of the cactus is harvested a small, greenish button. You are sitting in a circle, perhaps inside a teepee, in a ceremony that will last all night. The buttons are passed around. They are incredibly bitter, and you chew them with difficulty. The high comes on slowly, a building wave of nausea followed by a profound shift in perception. The world becomes saturated with color. The sound of the ritual drumming is a physical force that you can feel in your bones. The visions are not of gods of war, but of gentle animal spirits, of landscapes, of pure light, of your own ancestors. The feeling is one of deep emotional healing, of cleansing, of being connected to your community and to the earth. This world has its own unique forms of intoxication too, which brings us to our quirky tidbit. In the southeastern part of North America, various tribes practiced a purification ritual using what was called the black drink. It was a tea brewed from the leaves and twigs of the yaupon holly, a plant that happens to be the only native source of caffeine in North America. They would brew it into a dark, powerful stimulant. But the key part of the ritual was its name. The plant's Latin name is Ilex vomitoria. Participants would drink great quantities of the hot, caffeinated tea, and then as a group induce vomiting, purging themselves completely. This act was seen as a vital purification, cleansing the body and spirit of impurities, making them ready for important councils, ceremonies, or battle. It was a ritual of getting high on caffeine and then getting clean all at once. The sheer power and centrality of these visionary plants in the Americas raises profound questions. Anthropologists and theologians still debate how to interpret the complex religious systems that arose from these entheogenic experiences. Were the entities and realms the users described actual spiritual realities, or were they profound archetypal projections of the human subconscious, shaped and given meaning by their vibrant cultural mythologies? For you sitting in the humid darkness of the jungle, the theological debate is meaningless. The experience is all that matters. Compare this to the European view. A witch who claimed to fly and meet with strange horned beings was seen as consorting with the devil, a source of evil to be punished. Here, the man who flies on the back of a feathered serpent and speaks with the gods is a priest, a source of wisdom to be revered. The plants are not a secret sin, but a public sacrament. It is the same fundamental human desire to transcend the ordinary, but the cultural container, the intention and the interpretation make it an entirely different universe of experience. Let us pull our minds back across that vast imaginary ocean, leaving the jungles and deserts of the Americas behind. We return to the familiar grey-skied landscape of medieval Europe. The air, once thick with the scent of orchids and damp earth, now smells of coal smoke, livestock, and cold stone. We have just witnessed cultures where a man who eats a mushroom and sees visions of his gods is a holy priest, a pillar of his community. But here in the heart of Christendom, a person who sees visions is walking a razor's edge. On one side lies sainthood and eternal glory. On the other, heresy, damnation, and the consuming flames of the Inquisitor's fire. In your world, the supernatural is not a distant, abstract concept. It is an ever-present reality. The veil between the physical and spiritual worlds is thin and porous. Angels and demons are locked in a constant, invisible war for the souls of humankind, and that war is often fought within the theatre of the human mind. So when someone, a devout nun in her cloister, a simple farmer in his field, claims to have had a vision, the question is not, did they imagine it? The question is far more urgent. Who sent it? Was it a divine message from God, the Virgin Mary, or one of the saints? Or was it a demonic trick, a glamour woven by Satan to lead the faithful astray? The fate of your soul, and perhaps your body, depends entirely on the answer. Let's imagine you are a devout young woman who has dedicated her life to God within the quiet, disciplined walls of a convent. Your days are a repeating hypnotic cycle of prayer, chant, and labor. You fast relentlessly, sometimes eating nothing for days but a single wafer of the Eucharist. You deprive yourself of sleep, spending long hours of the night kneeling on the cold stone floor of the chapel in silent prayer. This extreme asceticism, the fasting, the sleeplessness, the constant focused meditation begins to change you. From a modern neurological perspective, these practices are known to induce altered states of consciousness. But for you, they are a way of emptying yourself, of making your soul a clean and quiet vessel for the voice of God. And one day it happens. During a prayer, the world around you simply vanishes. You are no longer aware of the cold stones, the flickering candles, the voices of your sisters. You are seized by a state of raptus or ecstasy, a feeling of love so immense and overwhelming that it is almost painful, floods your entire being. You are filled with a brilliant, shimmering light, what the great mystic Hildegard von Bingen called the living light. Within this light, you see visions. Perhaps Christ appears to you, showing you his sacred heart. Perhaps the Virgin Mary speaks to you, her voice like music. The visions are not vague or dreamlike. They are hyper-real, more vivid and meaningful than your waking life. You may receive prophecies, theological insights, or divine instructions. When you return to your body hours later, you are exhausted but filled with a profound sense of peace and purpose. Your experience becomes the talk of the church. Bishops and theologians come to interview you, to examine your story. They are not here to praise you, not yet. They are here to investigate you. And the framework they use is a complex and serious process known as the discretio spirituum, the discernment of spirits. This is the official mainstream historical fact of our evening. The Church had what amounted to a spiritual checklist to determine if a vision was a bona fide miracle or a demonic deception. First, they examine the content. Does your vision conform to established church doctrine? If the Virgin Mary tells you something that contradicts the Gospels, it is not the Virgin Mary. It is a demon wearing her face. Second, they examine your character. Are you humble? Do you obey your superiors in the convent without question? Pride, arrogance, and a rebellious spirit are the devil's calling cards. A true visionary is an obedient and humble servant of God. Third, and most importantly, they examine the fruits of your vision. Does the experience make you a better person? Does it fill you with greater love for God and your neighbors? Does it inspire peace, charity, and virtue in those who hear of it? If so, it is likely from God. But if it leads to chaos, despair, pride, or discord, it is the devil's work. Now imagine the experience is different. A man in your village begins to have fits. He thrashes on the ground, his body contorting into unnatural positions. He screams vile blasphemies in a voice that is not his own. He shows a horrifying strength, breaking ropes that should hold him. He spits and snarls at the sight of a crucifix. The symptoms are terrifyingly similar to what you saw during the ergot plague, but the interpretation is purely spiritual. This is not a holy ecstasy. This is demonic possession. The source of this altered state is clearly evil, and the solution is not investigation but exorcism. The line between the two states could be terrifyingly thin and often depended on the interpretation of the authorities. Consider our quirky and somewhat unsettling tidbit for this section, the phenomenon of holy anorexics. Saints like Catherine of Siena practiced fasting to such an extreme that they essentially starved themselves. Catherine claimed to live on nothing but the Holy Eucharist and the bitter herbs she chewed to deaden her senses. This profound starvation was not seen as a sickness, but as a miracle, a sign of her utter devotion. From our modern perspective, the hallucinations, the trances, and the ecstatic states she experienced were undoubtedly linked to the physiological effects of severe malnutrition. But in her time, her self-inflicted starvation sanctified her visions, proving they were born of piety, not indulgence. This is the great chasm between your world and the one we glimpsed in the Americas. The Aztec shaman ate the flesh of the gods to see his visions. If you, a Christian mystic, were to deliberately eat a psychoactive plant or mushroom to induce a vision, you would be immediately condemned as a witch. The method was everything. An altered state reached through the approved methods of suffering, fasting, prayer, self-denial could be divine. An altered state reached through the unapproved method of consuming a substance was, by definition, demonic. It was seen as a prideful attempt to force God's hand to steal a glimpse of heaven rather than waiting humbly for it to be granted. Modern scholars, particularly those in the fields of psychology and neuroscience, often debate the nature of these mystical experiences, suggesting they might be explained by phenomena like temporal lobe epilepsy, psychosis, or the effects of extreme asceticism. Theologians and historians of religion, on the other hand, emphasize the importance of understanding these visions within the rich cultural and spiritual framework in which they occurred. For you, this debate is meaningless. The experience is real. All that matters is whether you will be called a saint or a heretic. You walk the mystic's path, a tightrope stretched over a canyon with the blinding light of heaven on one side and the fires of hell burning brightly on the other. Let us leave the cold stone walls of the cloister, the stark choice between divine ecstasy and demonic terror, and step into a world that worships a much more tangible kind of spirit. The hypnotic rhythm of the nun's chant fades, replaced by the lively music of a lute and the roaring of a great fire. You are no longer a humble supplicant walking a spiritual tightrope. You are an honored guest in the great hall of a powerful nobleman, and the air here is not thick with incense, but with the rich, greasy, and altogether wonderful smell of roasted meat. It's a world of power, of wealth, and of loud, unapologetic, earthly pleasure. You are seated at a long trestle table, draped in fine linen. The hall is a cavern of flickering torchlight and dancing shadows, its stone walls covered with magnificent tapestries depicting heroic hunts and epic battles. The sheer abundance is staggering. Servants move through the throng carrying platters piled high with roasted swans, peacocks redressed in their own feathers, enormous meat pies, and towers of glistening jellies. This is a universe away from the peasant's monotonous diet of dark bread, watery stew, and the occasional bit of salted pork. And just as the food is in a different class, so is the drink. Let your mind drift back to the village alehouse. Remember the drink of the common man. The cloudy, yeasty, low-alcohol small beer served at room temperature in a rough wooden or earthenware cup. It was more food than drink, a source of calories and safe hydration. The strong ale served on feast days was a potent treat, certainly, but it was still a simple rustic brew. Here in the great hall, such a drink would be considered fit only for the lowest servants. Your cup is not made of wood, but of polished silver, perhaps even glass from Venice, if your host is truly wealthy. And what fills it is not ale, but wine. Wine is the lifeblood of the aristocracy. It is the drink of the Bible, the drink of the Romans, the drink of Christ's Last Supper. It carries a prestige that the humble grain could never match. The wine in your cup has likely made a long journey from the sun-drenched vineyards of Gascony in France, transported in lumbering ships and then in barrels by cart to this castle. Its very presence on the table is a statement of wealth and connection. But the nobleman does not simply drink his expensive wine as it is. That would be far too simple. He transforms it into something far more potent, more luxurious, and more intoxicating. A servant approaches with a silver ewer and fills your cup with a deep red fragrant liquid. You lift it to your lips, and the aroma alone is overwhelming. It is wine, yes, but it is infused with the warm, sweet, and exotic scents of cinnamon, ginger, and cloves. You take a sip. It is sweet, warming, and incredibly potent. The alcoholic kick is immediate, but it's accompanied by a wave of sugary energy and the complex, tingling heat of the spices. This is Hippocras, the signature drink of the medieval elite, and our mainstream historical fact for this evening. Named after the ancient Greek physician Hippocrates, it was a wildly popular and high-status beverage made by mixing wine with sugar or honey, and a potent cocktail of expensive spices that had travelled the length of the Silk Road to be here. The experience of drinking Hippocras is a world away from drinking ale. The massive dose of sugar, a luxury so expensive it was often kept under lock and key, provides a dizzying rush of energy. The spices like cinnamon and grains of paradise were believed to have warming, stimulating, and even aphrodisiacal properties. Combined with the alcohol, the effect is a heady, complex, and powerful buzz. It's a drink designed not just to intoxicate, but to showcase the host's incredible wealth. Every sip is a taste of faraway lands, a liquid display of power and influence. Of course, the immense cost of the ingredients meant that such a drink was a decadent fantasy for the vast majority of the population. This leads us to a quirky little tidbit about the other great use of sugar at these feasts, the sotelti or subtlety. Between the main courses, servants would carry out incredible edible sculptures molded from sugar paste and marzipan. They could be castles, ships, mythological creatures, or even little scenes with witty political commentary. Like Hippocras, they were a form of edible propaganda, a way to stun your guests with your wealth. And interestingly, sugar was classified by physicians, along with spices, as a medicine hot and moist in the system of the humours. So a nobleman could justify his gluttonous consumption of sugary wine and candy sculptures as a perfectly reasonable way of keeping his body in balance. It was health food, you see. But was there another reason for the heavy spicing? Food historians still debate whether the heavy spicing of medieval wines was primarily a way to show off the host's immense wealth, or if it served a more practical purpose of masking the taste of wine that had often spoiled or soured during its long journey in wooden barrels. Was that blast of cinnamon and ginger a luxurious flourish, or was it a clever way to make a gallon of vinegar-tinged wine drinkable? The answer is likely a bit of both. And for the truly powerful, there was a new and even more potent substance beginning to appear at the feast table. In the smoky laboratories of the alchemists and the back rooms of the most advanced apothecaries, the art of distillation was being perfected. They had learned to heat wine in a strange glass vessel called an alembic and collect the condensed steam. The result was aqua ardens, the burning water, a raw, fiery spirit of pure alcohol. While it was still mostly considered a powerful medicine, a preservative for herbs, or a cordial to revive a fainting noble, its intoxicating power was undeniable. A nobleman might add a splash of this potent spirit to his wine to fortify it, or drink a small, sweetened measure of it as a digestive aid after the heavy meal. It was a secret weapon in the arsenal of intoxication, a hint of the future of spirits that was just around the corner. You look around the great hall at the flushed faces and loud laughter of the noble guests, their silver cups constantly refilled with the sweet spiced wine. Their high is a different species entirely from that of the peasants in the village. The peasant's high is a brief respite, a communal release from a life of hardship, fueled by a simple brew made from his own grain. The nobleman's high is a performance, a carefully crafted experience of luxury and power, fueled by the most expensive and exotic ingredients the world has to offer. In your world, even the path to oblivion is paved by class. The sweet, spicy warmth of the Hippocras fades from your memory. The sound of the minstrel's lute and the nobleman's boisterous laughter die away, replaced by a colder, harder reality. The feast, with its glorious consequence-free indulgence for the wealthy, is a beautiful illusion for the few. For the vast majority, the use of substances is governed by a complex and often brutal web of social rules and official laws. What happens when the party is over? What happens if you are not a powerful lord, but a common person who has transgressed the accepted boundaries of intoxication? What happens when the law, in all its righteous and terrifying power, turns its gaze upon you? Let's begin with the most common offense: simple public drunkenness. Back in the village, when a man has too much of the alewife's strong brew and starts a brawl or sings lewd songs or simply passes out in the middle of the road, the law is concerned not with his health, but with public order. The nobleman in his great hall can drink himself into a stupor without consequence. That is his private affair. But your drunkenness, played out on the public stage, is a disruption, a tear in the social fabric. The punishment for such a transgression is not meant to be rehabilitative, it is meant to be humiliating. You might find yourself locked in the stocks for a day, your head and hands clamped in a wooden frame on the village green. You are a captive audience for the scorn of your neighbours. Children throw mud and rotten vegetables at you. The village priest lectures you on the sin of gluttony. It is a public shaming, a way for the community to reinforce its norms by making an example of you. The goal is to ensure that next time you'll keep your intoxication to a respectable, manageable level. But the law's heavy hand falls with far greater force when the substance in question is not simple ale, and the intention is not merrymaking but something more secret and sinister. The deepest fears of your age are not of addiction or public nuisance, but of poison. In a world with no understanding of pathology, no autopsies, no forensic science, a sudden unexplained death is a deeply terrifying event. And the easiest, most logical explanation is often the most sinister poison. This fear creates a profound suspicion of anyone who possesses a secret knowledge of herbs and chemicals. The very same skills that allow the cunning woman to heal a sick child or the apothecary to mix a sleeping draught could be used to kill a rival or an unwanted spouse. This is where the law becomes truly terrifying. The crime was known by a name inherited from the ancient Romans, beneficium. And this is a crucial historical fact. Beneficium meant far more than just poisoning. It was a catch-all term for a whole host of dark arts. It meant the use of potions to cause harm, the casting of curses, the practice of witchcraft, the creation of love, charms, any act that used secret material substances to unnaturally influence the world. To be accused of beneficium was not just to be accused of murder. It was to be accused of colluding with demonic forces, of subverting the natural, God-given order of the universe. Imagine you are that village cunning woman. For years you have helped your neighbours. You have used your knowledge of the garden and the woods to deliver babies, to soothe fevers, to set bones. But you also know the dangerous plants. You know the ones that can bring on a deep sleep and the ones that can stop a heart. When a local farmer dies suddenly after a bitter argument with his wife, and someone remembers seeing her leaving your cottage a week earlier, the whispers begin. The fear, once a quiet undercurrent, now crests into a wave of accusation. You are arrested. Your trial will not be one of evidence, but of fear and superstition. In the earlier centuries, you might be subjected to an ordeal. You could be thrown into a river with your hands bound. If you float the water, a pure element of God has rejected you, proving your guilt. If you sink, you are innocent, though you may have already drowned. Later, the trials become more formal, but no less terrifying. You are brought before a magistrate, perhaps even an inquisitor from the church. He is not looking for proof. He is looking for a confession. And he has his methods. This leads us to a grim and quirky tidbit, the search for the witch's mark. You are stripped, and your body is examined by a panel of experts for any mark, a mole, a birthmark, even a large freckle. This, they claim, is the spot where the devil branded you as his own. The inquisitor takes a long, sharp pin and pricks the mark. If it does not bleed, or if you, in your state of shock and terror, do not flinch from the pain, it is considered irrefutable proof of your guilt. The punishment for the poisoner and the witch is designed to be the most horrific spectacle the state can devise. It must be a public cleansing, a ritual to purge the community of an unnatural evil. You are led to the public square. The crowd that once came to you for healing now jeers and spits at you. The sentence is to be burned at the stake. As the flames lick at your feet, your death serves as a brutal warning to any who would dare to practice such forbidden arts. The knowledge of plants, the power to alter consciousness and to affect the body with secret substances, is a dangerous power to hold. In the hands of the church or a licensed physician, it is medicine. In your hands, it is witchcraft. The very severity of these laws raises a question that historians and legal scholars still debate. Were the laws against poisoning and witchcraft truly about preventing murder and black magic, or were they primarily a tool for social control used to persecute unpopular individuals, especially independent women, midwives and herbalists, whose knowledge and power existed outside of official patriarchal structures like the church and the guilds? You stand in the crowd, watching the smoke rise against the sky, the smell of it thick and acrid in the air. The message is clear. Enjoy your ale, but do not cause a scene. Let the nobleman enjoy his spiced wine, for he is above the law. But do not dare to explore the more potent secrets of the natural world on your own. Do not be the one who knows too much. In your world, the line between a healer and a poisoner is as thin as an accuser's whisper, and the consequences for crossing it are absolute. Let the smell of fear and burning wood be carried away on the wind. We leave the grim realities of European law behind us now, and our journey takes us eastward once more. We travel further than we ever have before, past the Holy Land, past Persia, past the reach of the Silk Road's terminus. We sail across the warm turquoise waters of the Indian Ocean until we arrive in a world that is green, humid, and bursting with a vibrant, noisy life. The air is heavy, thick with the perfume of unknown blossoms, the rich smell of damp earth after a monsoon shower, and the tantalizing aroma of street food cooking over charcoal. You are a traveler in Southeast Asia, or perhaps the Indian subcontinent, and you are about to encounter a form of intoxication that is as central to the daily life of this world as ale was to the world you left behind. You are invited into the home of a local merchant. As a gesture of hospitality, he does not offer you a cup of wine or a flagon of beer. Instead, he presents you with a small, beautifully lacquered box. He opens it to reveal a collection of fresh, heart-shaped green leaves, a small pot containing a white paste, and a handful of hard reddish-brown nuts about the size of a nutmeg. With practiced, elegant movements, he takes one of the green leaves. This is from the beetle vine. He uses a small spatula to smear a thin layer of the white paste, which is slaked lime made from burnt seashells, onto the leaf. Then, using a special set of cutters, he slices a small piece from one of the hard areca nuts and places it in the center of the leaf. He folds the leaf with deft fingers into a neat little parcel a quid and offers it to you. This is your introduction to the beetle chew, a social ritual and a daily pleasure for hundreds of millions of people across Asia and the Pacific. Its use is our mainstream historical fact for this evening. The chewing of the areca nut wrapped in a beetle leaf is one of the most ancient and widespread traditions on the planet, with archaeological evidence of its use stretching back thousands of years. It is a cornerstone of social life, a custom as deeply ingrained as the handshake. You take the small green parcel, a little unsure of what to do. Your host gestures for you to put it in your mouth between your gum and your cheek, and to chew it gently. The initial taste is a powerful, complex burst of flavors, bitter, peppery, and pungent. It's an acquired taste, to be sure. As you chew, the three ingredients begin to work their chemical magic. The lime paste is the crucial catalyst reacting with the areca nut to release its active compound, a stimulant called arecaline. The effect is not a mind-bending trip, nor a heavy drunken stupor. It is a gentle, pleasant, and functional high. A slow, spreading warmth blossoms in your chest and radiates through your body. You feel a mild sense of euphoria, a lightheadedness that is cheerful, not disorienting. Your senses seem a little sharper, your mind more alert. It's a stimulant, much like the caffeine that is just beginning to be discovered in other parts of the world, but with a more pronounced mood-lifting effect. It is the perfect social lubricant, a drug that encourages conversation and a feeling of warm fellowship without clouding the mind or leading to aggression. Then you notice the most dramatic effect of the chew. You feel the need to spit, and when you do, the saliva that leaves your mouth is a shocking, vibrant blood-red color. You look at your host and see that his teeth and lips are stained a deep reddish black from years of chewing. He smiles, and you realize that in this culture, this is not an unsightly stain. It is a sign of a life lived sociably, a mark of community. The offering and sharing of a betel quid is a fundamental act of friendship, of business, of courtship. To refuse a quid that is offered is a serious social slight. Deals are sealed, marriages are arranged, and simple afternoons are passed in pleasant conversation, all through the shared ritual of the chew. The importance of this ritual is reflected in the art and craftsmanship surrounding it. The wealthy carry elaborate, beautifully crafted boxes made of silver ivory or lacquer to hold their betel ingredients. The cutters used to slice the hard areca nuts are often works of art in themselves, shaped like animals or mythical creatures. This is a far cry from the simple wooden cup of the European peasant. This brings us to our quirky cultural tidbit, the idea of a betel nut beauty. While your European culture prizes pale skin and rosy lips in many of the societies where betel was chewed, a red-stained mouth and blackened teeth were considered the very height of fashion and a mark of civilized beauty. In some places, teeth were even deliberately lacquered black to enhance this effect. White teeth were seen as plain animal-like and uncivilized. It's a striking reminder that the standards of beauty are as varied as the standards of intoxication. The sheer antiquity and widespread nature of this practice have led to some interesting questions. Historians debate the precise origins of the practice, with archaeological evidence suggesting it may have arisen independently in several locations across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Its social utility as a mild stimulant, a gesture of hospitality and a digestive aid was so profound that it became an example of convergent cultural evolution, a ritual that different peoples discovered and embraced for the same fundamental reasons. You sit with your host, the gentle, stimulating buzz humming pleasantly through your body. You chew and spit and talk and feel a sense of connection that transcends language. You are participating in an ancient and unbroken chain of social communion. You think back to the other substances you've encountered on our journey. The ale that fuels boisterous community in Europe. The opium that offers a solitary, dreamlike escape. The mushrooms that open a terrifying doorway to the gods. The betel nut is something else entirely. It is not for escape, nor for divine revelation. It is a tool for living, a gentle stimulant that oils the gears of daily social life, making connections between people just a little bit warmer, a little bit easier, one blood-red smile at a time. The warm, sociable and stimulating world of the beetle chew dissolves. We leave the humid green landscapes of the south behind and travel north, ever northward. We cross the great grassy steppes of Asia, the landscape growing colder, starker. The vibrant, noisy cities are replaced by an immense, profound silence. You are now in the taiga, the great subarctic forest that stretches across Siberia. It is a world of snow, of the deep, dark green of pine and the ghostly white of birch trees. The air is so cold and clean it feels sharp in your lungs. Life here is hard, nomadic, and deeply connected to the cycles of nature and the movements of the great reindeer herds. In this world, survival depends on the spirits, and the only person who can speak to them is the shaman. The shaman is the spiritual anchor of your small, nomadic community. He is not a priest who reads from a book, but a technician of the sacred, a master of ecstasy. When sickness strikes, when the reindeer herds vanish, when a soul is lost to despair, it is the shaman who must journey into the spirit world to find a cure, to bargain with the gods, to bring back the lost soul. And his journey is not powered by prayer alone. It is powered by a sacred and dangerous ally, a spirit that grows in the form of a mushroom. He calls it wapak. You know it as the Amanita muscaria, the fly agaric. You have seen it in the forest, and you know not to touch it. It is a thing of impossible beauty and power, pushing up through the dark earth, often at the base of a birch tree. Its cap is a brilliant blood red, dotted with fluffy snow-white warts. It looks like a jewel, an object from a fairy tale, something that does not belong to the ordinary world. And it doesn't. It belongs to the shaman. It is his horse, his boat, his spirit vehicle. Tonight, the shaman must make a journey. A child in your clan is sick with a fever that will not break, and his spirit is fading. You watch the shaman prepare in his yurt, the air thick with the smell of wood smoke and drying hides. He takes out a handful of the dried mushrooms, their red color now a dull, leathery brown. He chants softly, speaking to the spirit of the mushroom, asking for its help and its guidance. He eats a specific number of the caps, chewing them slowly and deliberately. This is the central documented fact of this world for centuries. The indigenous peoples of Siberia have used the Amanita muscaria mushroom as the central sacrament of their shamanic rituals. For an hour, the shaman sits silently by the fire as the mushroom's spirit enters his body. Then he falls into a deep, death-like sleep. His body is still, but his soul is beginning to stir. When he awakens, he is changed. His eyes are wide and he stares at the roof of the yurt as if it is the sky. The mushroom trance has begun. He experiences the world differently. The fire might seem as small as a candle, and his own hand as large as the sky. This is macropsia, and micropsia, a common effect of the mushroom. He feels an immense strength, and he begins to sing and drum his voice, a low, guttural chant, the beat of the drum, the rhythm of his spirit's flight. He is no longer fully in this world. His soul has been untethered, and he is flying, travelling up the world tree to the realm of the gods, or down into the earth to the land of the dead, searching for the cause of the child's sickness. The power of the mushroom is precious, and in this harsh land nothing is wasted. This leads to the strangest but best documented part of the ritual, our quirky tidbit for the evening. The shaman's body acts as a filter. It metabolizes the compounds in the mushroom that cause nausea and cramping, while passing the main psychoactive component muscimol out in his urine. During the ceremony, others who wish to share in the vision, or who need a lesser dose to aid in their own healing, will drink the shaman's urine. It sounds shocking to you, but here it is, a practical and sacred act. The shaman has tamed the raw, sometimes toxic power of the mushroom, purifying its spirit for the rest of the community to share. The shaman's journey and the appearance of the mushroom itself is so visually striking that it has led to one of the most fascinating and debated theories in all of folklore. Ethnobotanists and folklorists have famously debated the Santa Claus theory, which suggests that the entire mythos of Santa Claus is a modern, half-remembered echo of the ancient Siberian mushroom shaman. Think about it. The shaman, dressed in his ceremonial fur-trimmed coat, often red and white, would collect the sacred red and white mushrooms. He would then perform his soul flight, which he might describe as flying through the sky, often with his spirit animals, the reindeer, who incidentally are also known to seek out and eat the mushrooms. When he returned to the yurt to perform a healing, the main entrance might be blocked by snow, forcing him to enter and exit through the central smoke hole at the top of the chimney. And what did he carry with him? A sack filled with his precious healing mushrooms, his gifts for the community. The connections are tantalizing, a strange and magical possibility that the jolliest figure of the modern world might be a descendant of the most ancient form of psychedelic journeying. You watch all night as the shaman drums and sings, wrestling with unseen spirits. In the morning he collapses, exhausted but triumphant. He has found the cause of the sickness and has brought the child's spirit back. The fever breaks. The mushroom has worked its magic. You look at the small, beautiful, poisonous fungus with a new understanding. Here it is not the berserker's rage, but the healer's vehicle. It is not a drug, but a sacrament. It is the living doorway between your small, cold world and the vast, mysterious and sacred worlds that lie just beyond your sight. The vast, snowy silence of the Siberian taiga recedes, and the shaman's hypnotic drumming fades into the echoes of memory. We return once more to the cramped, bustling and smoky cities of late medieval Europe. But we are not going to the public square, the cathedral, or the nobleman's hall. We are heading down a narrow, winding alleyway to a stone building with shuttered windows from which a strange chemical smell emanates, and a thin plume of smoke perpetually rises. We are seeking a different kind of magic, a different kind of flight. We are here to peer into the laboratory of the alchemist. The shaman's goal was to heal his community by journeying into the spirit world. The alchemist's goal is far more personal, more ambitious, and more secret. He seeks nothing less than the perfection of matter and the conquest of death itself. You push open a heavy iron-banded door and step into a world of controlled fire and bubbling glass. The room is hot, dusty, and cluttered with the bewildering tools of a secret art. In the center stands the Athanor, the alchemist's furnace, its belly glowing with a constant, gentle heat that it must maintain for weeks or months on end. The shelves are a library of esoteric knowledge, filled not just with heavy leather-bound books, but with hundreds of glass vessels of impossible shapes, looping tubes called pelicans, long-necked retorts, and the bulbous alembics used for distillation. The air is thick with the smells of sulfur charcoal and a sharp metallic tang you can't quite identify. This is the workshop for the magnum opus, the great work. The alchemist, a stooped figure with soot-stained hands and eyes that burn with a focused intensity, is on a twofold quest. His first, most famous goal is to create the philosopher's stone, a legendary substance said to have the power to transmute base metals like lead into pure, incorruptible gold. But this is not just about greed. For the true alchemist, the transformation of metals is a physical manifestation of a deeper spiritual process. The purification of lead into gold is a metaphor for the purification of his own soul, a journey from the darkness of ignorance to the light of divine wisdom. The second goal, intertwined with the first, is the creation of the elixir of life, a potion that could cure all disease, reverse the aging process, and grant immortality. It is this quest for a definitive world-altering substance that drives him to mix, to melt, to distill and to consume some of the strangest concoctions ever devised. And a key historical fact is that in this mystical, often metaphorical quest, the alchemists laid the foundations of modern chemistry. They were the first to systematically investigate the properties of metals and minerals, and they discovered or perfected processes and substances that would change the world. They believed the world was composed of fundamental principles, chiefly sulfur and mercury, which they saw not just as chemicals, but as the symbolic male and female hot and cold, fixed and volatile forces of the universe. Their work was a dangerous hands-on process of trying to separate and recombine these principles. But the most important substance for our journey is one they perfected and revered: highly concentrated alcohol. Through the patient process of distillation, which they refined to a fine art, they could take simple wine and, by heating it and collecting its vapor, extract its very essence, its spirit. They called this clear, fiery liquid aqua vitae, the water of life. They believed it was a step towards the elixir, a substance that was pure spirit freed from its dull material body. It was a powerful medicine, a solvent for other ingredients, and a profoundly potent intoxicant. This quest for the elixir led alchemists down some very strange and dangerous paths, which brings us to our quirky and frankly terrifying tidbit: the creation of potable gold, or aurum potabile. The logic seemed impeccable to them. Gold was the most perfect and noble of all metals. It never tarnished, never corroded. It was, in a sense, immortal. Therefore, if a person could consume gold, they could absorb its perfect immortal nature into their own body. The problem was, you can't eat a gold coin. So using powerful acids they had discovered, like aqua regia, royal water, they found a way to dissolve the gold, turning it into a reddish liquid. They would then mix this solution with essential oils or alcohol and drink it. They were, in effect, drinking a highly toxic solution of heavy metal salts, believing it to be the key to eternal life. It was a potent medicine for the soul that was a lethal poison for the body. The true nature of the alchemist's work remains a subject of intense scholarly fascination. Historians of science continue to debate the true nature of alchemy. Was it a genuine, if flawed, precursor to modern chemistry driven by empirical observation? Or was it primarily a mystical, allegorical system of spiritual development, with the chemical experiments serving as a complex metaphor for inner transformation? The truth is, it was both at once a strange and beautiful fusion of the scientific and the spiritual that is difficult for our modern minds to fully grasp. You watch the alchemist as he carefully tends his bubbling concoctions. His is a solitary high, a long and patient intoxication, fueled not by a single dose of a plant, but by years of obsessive work, by the inhalation of mercury vapor, and by the constant hope that the next distillation, the next calcination, will be the one that finally unlocks the ultimate secrets of God and nature. He is not seeking a brief escape from reality. He is seeking to fundamentally rewrite its laws. He is a different kind of psychonaut. His journeys confined to the smoky secret world of his laboratory, his visions found not in the spirit of a mushroom, but in the slow, miraculous transformation of matter itself. The alchemist's secret, smoky laboratory, with its obsessive, inward-looking quest for perfection, begins to feel like a relic of a bygone age. As the medieval period gives way to the Renaissance, the focus of the European mind turns outward. A new hunger for knowledge, for wealth, and for exploration is sweeping the continent. The old maps with their frightening dragons and unknown voids are being redrawn. Ships rigged with the hemp you know so well are pushing past the boundaries of the known world, and when they return, they bring with them not just gold and slaves and strange new foods, but entirely new ways of altering consciousness. The world is about to get much, much bigger, and the catalogue of intoxication is about to be radically expanded. You are living in a bustling port city like Seville or Lisbon at the dawn of the Age of Discovery. You see the tall ships scarred from their impossible journeys across the Atlantic limp into harbour. The sailors who disembark seem like men from another planet, their skin burned dark by a foreign sun, their minds filled with stories of a new world, and they bring with them a bizarre and to you frankly demonic habit. You see a sailor take a roll of dried leaves, light one end with a taper, and put the other end in his mouth. He then proceeds to deliberately suck the smoke into his body and exhale it in a grey, pungent cloud. This is Europe's first encounter with tobacco. The Spanish called the practice beber humo, to drink smoke. Your initial reaction is one of revulsion and suspicion. In your world, smoke belongs in a chimney or rising from an incense thurible. To voluntarily fill your own lungs with it seems like a profoundly unnatural, even hellish act. The first practitioners are viewed as sorcerers or madmen, but the sailors persist, claiming the smoke calms them, focuses their minds and wards off hunger and fatigue. Soon physicians and botanists begin to investigate the plant. Men like Jean Nicot, the French ambassador to Portugal, promote it as a miraculous medicine, a panacea that can cure everything from toothaches to syphilis. And the nicotine in its leaves, a powerfully addictive alkaloid, does the rest. Within a single generation, this savage custom explodes across the continent with a speed that is truly staggering. A central historical fact of the early modern period is the incredibly rapid global adoption of tobacco. It becomes a social craze, a fashion, a habit that transcends class, from the king with his clay pipe to the common labourer with his twist of cheap leaf. The world has its first truly global recreational drug. But the ships are bringing more than just smoke. They bring whispers from the Ottoman Empire tales of a strange new beverage that is taking the Islamic world by storm. It is a hot black bitter drink brewed from a roasted bean that is said to banish sleep and sharpen the mind. Soon Venetian merchants begin to import it. They call it coffee. At first, it too is viewed with suspicion, derided by some as the bitter invention of Satan. But its effects are undeniable, and it gives rise to a completely new kind of social institution, the coffee house. You step into one of the first coffee houses in London or Paris. The contrast with the old medieval alehouse is absolute. The alehouse was a place of loud, drunken chaos. The coffee house is a place of quiet, sober industry. The air is thick with the rich, wonderful aroma of roasting coffee, not stale beer and sweat. Men sit at small tables, not brawling, but reading the newly invented newspapers, discussing politics and commerce, and making business deals. They are called penny universities, because for the price of a single cup of coffee, a man could sit for hours and listen to the sharpest and most educated minds of the age debate the issues of the day. The high it provides is a new kind of intoxication perfectly suited for this new modernizing world. Alcohol fogs the mind. Opium sends you into a dream. Coffee does the opposite. It brings you into a state of sharp, focused, rational clarity. It is the perfect fuel for the emerging age of capitalism, science, and enlightenment. And there is a third arrival from the New World, perhaps the most beloved of all. The Spanish conquistadors in Mexico observed the Aztec nobility drinking a strange treasured beverage. It was called zocolatl. It was made from the beans of the cacao tree, which were so valuable they were used as a form of currency. But this was not the sweet, comforting drink you might imagine. The Aztec version was bitter, frothy, and often spiced with chili and vanilla, and it was a stimulating, powerful drink reserved for warriors and emperors. This brings us to a delicious, quirky tidbit: the secret century-long transformation of chocolate. The Spanish were the first Europeans to embrace it, but they found the original version too harsh. In the quiet of their monasteries and convents, Spanish monks and nuns began to experiment. They kept the process a closely guarded secret for almost 100 years, but they were the ones who had the revolutionary idea of adding cane sugar and familiar spices like cinnamon. They took a bitter, stimulating warrior's brew from a pagan empire and transformed it into the sweet, decadent, comforting luxury that would eventually become the world's favorite treat. This trio of new arrivals, tobacco, coffee, and chocolate, fundamentally changed the psychoactive landscape of Europe. They were all primarily stimulants. They were drugs that helped you work, think, and socialize. This marks a profound shift in what people were looking for in a substance. The medieval desire for oblivion, for ecstatic visions, for a brief escape from a life of pain, was being replaced by a modern desire for productivity, for rational thought, for new forms of social engagement. This transformation was not without its critics, of course. Historians debate the role the coffeehouse played in the intellectual and political transformations of the 17th and 18th centuries. Were these new spaces genuinely engines of democracy and cradles of the Enlightenment, or did they simply provide a new venue for the same elite social circles to conduct their business, albeit with a different beverage in hand? Whatever the case, the change was undeniable. The age of the ale-soaked peasant and the reclusive alchemist was ending. The age of the coffee-drinking intellectual and the pipe-smoking merchant had begun. And so the world you knew, the medieval world with its strange and specific intoxications, truly comes to an end. The arrival of coffee, tobacco, and chocolate are the heralds of a new modern era, fueled by global trade and the stimulating buzz of caffeine and nicotine. The slow, earthy rhythms of the ale-soaked village and the mystical pursuits of the cloistered nun seem to belong to a distant, dreamlike past. But the ghosts of that world have not vanished. They linger. Their beliefs, their fears, and their discoveries are woven into the very fabric of our modern minds, and they continue to shape our own complicated relationship with altered states of consciousness in ways we rarely notice. Think of the fear. Think back to the witch with her secret knowledge of poisonous plants and the panic of beneficium that gripped the medieval mind. That deep-seated terror of the unknown substance of the secret potion that can harm the body and corrupt the soul has never really left us. It echoes today in the rhetoric of every war on drugs. The shadowy drug dealer is a modern incarnation of the poisoner, a figure of malice who threatens the social order with their illicit concoctions. The language used to describe the dangers of a new drug often mirrors the medieval priest's warnings about a new heresy. It is portrayed as a corrupting influence, a moral contagion that threatens to rot society from within. We may have traded the fear of demonic possession for the fear of addiction, but the underlying anxiety about losing control, about surrendering our will to a chemical agent, is a direct inheritance from that older, more superstitious time. But it is not only the fears that have survived. The knowledge has too. The patient, methodical work of the alchemist in his smoky lab, seeking to isolate the pure spirit from the crude body of a substance, is the direct ancestor of modern pharmacology. Our entire pharmaceutical industry is built upon that same alchemical principle. The mainstream historical fact of our final evening together is this: the quest to find the philosopher's stone led circuitously to the birth of the scientific method. When a modern chemist isolates morphine from the raw opium of the poppy, they are completing the great work that the alchemist began. They are extracting the aqua vitae, the water of life, from the plant, and the apothecary's shop, that morally ambiguous space where healing, pleasure, and poison were all dispensed from the same set of jars, is the blueprint for our modern pharmacy, a place where you can get a life-saving antibiotic, a bottle of wine, and a packet of cigarettes, and in some cases a highly addictive opioid painkiller, all under one roof. The ethical dilemmas have changed their clothes, but they remain the same. And this brings us to a final, slightly ironic, quirky tidbit. Remember the witch's flying ointment and its unholy trinity of henbane, nightshade, and mandrake? Remember the powerful tropane alkaloids they contained, which sent the user on a terrifying hallucinatory flight? One of those alkaloids, scopolamine, is still a staple of modern medicine. Today, you can get a prescription for a small patch that you wear behind your ear. It releases a tiny controlled dose of scopolamine into your body to prevent motion sickness. The very chemical that once fueled the legendary flights of witches is now used to ensure you have a pleasant and vomit-free experience on a cruise ship or a long car ride. The magic has been tamed, measured, and turned into a mundane convenience. But in this taming, perhaps something has been lost. The journey we have taken has shown us that for most of human history, the most powerful psychoactive substances were embedded in a rich context of ritual, of community, of spirituality. The Siberian shaman did not eat his mushroom to get high. He ate it to save his community. The Aztec priest did not consume the flesh of the gods for kicks. He did it to commune with the divine. Even the Christian mystics' visions induced by starvation and prayer were part of a deep and meaningful theological framework. In our modern world, we have largely separated the substance from the ceremony. Sociologists and ethicists continue to debate whether our modern, often purely recreational approach to intoxication represents a form of social progress and individual freedom, or a profound loss of the ritual, spiritual, and communal contexts that gave these experiences meaning and structure in pre-modern societies. In recent years, we've seen the first stirrings of a change, a psychedelic renaissance, where scientists are re-examining these ancient plants and fungi not as party drugs, but as powerful therapeutic tools to treat depression and trauma. It is, in a way, a return to an older kind of wisdom, an acknowledgement that these substances can be more than just an escape. They can, in the right context, be a journey. Our long trip through the past has shown us that humans have always sought such journeys. From the humblest garden weed to the alchemist's burning water, from the sacred mushroom to the nobleman's spiced wine, we have always searched for a key to unlock the doors of perception. The plants and the potions may change, but the quest itself is an eternal part of who we are. The echoes of the alchemist and the shaman now begin to fade. Their stories told, their secrets shared with you for this one quiet night. The memory of the smoky medieval hut, the grand feasting hall, the silent monastery, and the humid living jungle can all dissolve now, leaving behind only the soft darkness of your own room and the steady, gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Our long journey through time is over. The final page has been turned, and all that is left to do is rest. The history of the world, with all its strange and wonderful intoxications, is a vast and swirling dream, and now it is time for you to drift into your own. Let the weight of the day fall away. Let the busy thoughts of your mind grow quiet and still, like dust settling in a moonlit room. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to see, just the peaceful, empty and welcoming space of sleep. The journey is done. Now you can let go. End of script. Sweet dreams.